How do I know? What do you mean by know?
What do I mean by know? Welcome to atheism.
How about this? Why don't you tell me one thing you know?
Why?
Because that's my question, sir.
Well, what do you mean by know?
Justified true belief.
I'm not claiming to know.
Anything.
I don't just think or believe that there's value in debating. I know there's value in it.
Like the thing is, when I ask you how do you know something, if you don't answer that to anybody else, a cop comes up to you, and they ask you how you know something, you don't say, what do you mean by know, officer? I mean, you only have to play these philosophical mumbo-jumbo games with a Christian to avoid the God that all of you know exists. Sure, you can laugh if you want, but it's absurd. It's absurd.
So if you and I are sitting here, and evidently we can't agree, but if we could agree that we are in a shared reality, then reality are those things that we agree upon, that we can demonstrate reliably. But at a core level, because we can't demonstrate that we're not a brain in a vat, the reality is the reality I experience. I just happen to be convinced and believe, for what I think are good reasons, that I'm sharing it with all these other people.
Right, but you have no basis for knowing that, though.
I didn't say I knew it, did I? I don't even know what you mean by know it.
That's the absurdity of this. It's absolutely absurd to engage with somebody who wants to have a debate about truth, and you ask him how he knows something to be true, and he says, well, I don't claim to know anything to be true. It's absurd.
For both of you, but I'd like Matt to answer first. What's the difference between saying something is and saying I know something is?
Like I said during the rebuttal, that to know or knowledge may in fact be an entirely useless label, because it is so it's still an open question in philosophy. We're still trying to figure out exactly what knowledge is, and quite frankly, I think we're chasing something that we may not have any reason to chase. That maybe belief and rationally justified belief is all we could ever hope for.
You know, I didn't travel so many thousands of miles to go there and to hear what Matt believes. That's why it wasn't a debate. He was giving his faith statement.
Well, when Matt says something is the case, what he's really saying is, I know it's the case. But the thing is, he's going to want to say, I believe it's the case. Well, do me a favor, Matt. In the future, instead of saying something is the case, be consistent with your worldview and just say you believe it's the case.
How about I say what I want?
Okay, you can say what you want, but the thing is, the reason that you do that is because when I challenge, when you say something is the case, I say, do you know it? No, I just believe it. But you're saying it as though you know it, and that's the problem.
You just said that when I say something is the case, I'm saying I know it, and I just got done saying that when I say something is the case, I'm not saying I know it.
Right, but the thing is, you ask anybody.
So you know more about what's going on in my head than I do.
Well, I'm saying that if
Is that right?
If you did a survey of somebody who says, well, this is the case.
So are you calling me a liar?
I'm saying, if you're saying that this is the case,
I don't care about a survey. You said what I meant.
Hang on a second.
You said that I meant something.
That's
Are you calling me a liar?
Yes.
Okay.
Simple question again. Without God, how do you know anything for certain?
Again, these devices that we use, such as logic and reason, are self-justifying. They're tautological in nature.
Okay, I'll help you. Are you know for certain that they're tautological in nature?
Well, the thing is that you can't argue for these things without using them, which would be.
Do you know for certain that you can't argue with those things without using them?
certain. You can make the claim basically that you don't really know anything.
You know for certain that you can make that claim?
Yes, you can.
How do you know that?
Because there's certain, again, the problem with epistemology is that you're constantly in search for sufficient enough justification to say that you know.
Let me help you out with your epistemology here. The way that epistemology works is like this, is that everything that we know is based on pre-commitments that we'd already made, and those pre-commitments are informed by our worldview. And you have a certain assumed worldview that you bring to the table. So when you analyze any article of knowledge whatsoever, or you make any article of any claim of knowledge whatsoever, your worldview has already assumed and has already informed your answer. My thing is this: if we're not honest with our assumptions, if we're not honest with our presuppositions, then we never get anywhere in terms of the argument of either philosophy or epistemology or metaphysics or anything.
The last thing I'll say before I go,
okay.
that is itself based on a presupposition.
That's right.
So every
I'm not denying the transcendental nature of worldviews. You are.
But the problem is, but the last thing I'll say is that everything you say suggests that there is a God, and that is based, that is sufficient.
Yeah.
That gives sufficient enough justification to know something.
Would it be safe, based on the things that you've said here today, would it be safe for me to say about you that you don't know anything for certain? Yes. You could be wrong about everything that you claim to know?
Absolutely.
So then it follows that even in terms of your assertions about God, you could be wrong.
Again, this is a...
No, right or wrong. You could be wrong about your assertions concerning God.
Absolutely. And I
So then for you to come up and say, according to Christianity, you cannot do X, Y, and Z, that is false, isn't it? Because you don't know for certain.
Well, I gotta go to work, but...
Of course you do. Yeah. Thank you. Just before you speak, let me just clarify here. My argument as a Christian, I've been coming to this campus for about 12 years now, and I've been making what's known as a transcendental argument for the existence of God. It goes something like this. Without God, we don't have the foundations for morals, meaning, and beauty, aesthetics. We do not have the basis for ethics, morality, epistemology, or metaphysics, the study of reality. Without God as your precondition, your pre-commitment, and your foundation for reason, you don't have a tenable, meaning a reliable worldview. You have a self-refuting worldview. Exhibit A, that young man that just left, he came up here saying, you cannot do this as a Christian. You cannot assert that by your belief in God. But this is a person who just got done telling us, I could be wrong about everything I claim to know. See what's going on there? He's saying, I absolutely know for certain that I don't know anything, absolutely. that is the epitome of a self-refuting position, okay? You say neither do you, but I'm going to ask you, how do you know that for certain?
I know. You quoted one conversation and said, atheists say their view doesn't make sense.
I said I've met many atheists in one-on-one conversations who would be willing to admit that when you take it to its logical conclusion, you can't make sense of reality.
And Eric, I've met many atheists that believe they can still talk to their dead loved ones.
Okay,
it doesn't mean all atheists are skeptical.
Okay, can you make sense of reality?
See, this is what you do.
I won't answer.
No, it's not that I won't answer, because
Answer
these questions are
It's
so
not that he
generic.
won't
Can you
answer,
make
it's that
sense
he
of
can't
reality,
answer.
David?
That doesn't
Can
make
you
any
make sense
sense.
of reality? Can you make sense of
Define
what is
sense, define reality, philosophical, blah, blah, vomit. No, you're not going to do that to this show.
How do you know
It's
what's real?
ridiculous.
How do you know it's real?
My point to you, Sai, is you intentionally go back to the Bible every time.
Of course.
But
That's my ultimate authority.
And, okay.
You go to your reasoning every
Yeah.
time.
I do
That's
go to
your
reasoning every time.
That's
Thank
your
you.
authority.
How do
That's
you
right.
know? How do
You
you know
open
that
your
your
own
reasoning
Bible.
Thank you.
is valid?
Thank
You go to your reasoning.
I understand.
How do you know?
You're opening your own
But the-
Bible.
How do you know that your reasoning is valid?
Okay, but the question is,
How do you know your reasoning is valid?
the question is, why do you believe the Bible when it was written by people who were
No,
also sinners?
First of all, I say, why do I believe the Bible? Because if you reject it, your worldview is absurd. That's why.
But the people that wrote the Bible could have been wrong.
Based on what standard? How do you know that?
See, this
See,
is
they
why
could
they don't
be
like
wrong.
you. This is why they don't like you.
No, the thing is, you won't
won't
answer questions.
You won't answer any of our questions.
You won't
David,
answer
can-
the questions.
Can
How
you
do you
make
know what's
sense of
real?
your reasoning?
How do you know what's real?
Guys, this isn't about this.
Exactly. Won't answer it again. I'm looking forward to watching this. This is
I
gonna
don't
be
understand what your point is.
Okay,
I'm asking
can
you
you know
specifically.
what is real?
I'm asking you
Simple question.
specifically about the Bible.
Yeah, but you're doing it with a false premise
good. This revelation from God. What's your basis for certainty?
about anything.
Well, I mean, there are several things that I think, that I believe, like Matt was saying. I think he did a very good job of explaining things he believes, but that he could be wrong about. And I'm fine with that.
So
But-
what's your basis for certainty?
Well, here's the
About
problem.
anything.
I'm not claiming to have extraterrestrial knowledge.
Right. What's your basis?
What's
so
your
I'm not-
basis for certainty?
Right. About anything.
What do you mean by that?
About
How do you know
any-
anything?
How do you know
What is
anything to be
certainty?
true?
See, that's the song and dance we get all the time.
Certainty.
My
All of you
song and
know.
dance, are
That's
you
right.
kidding me?
How do you know
Okay,
anything?
step up to the mic. What's your
See,
name?
Let's go to the mic because I don't want to answer the question.
It doesn't make any sense, guys.
Because you can't answer.
no,
the
because
question.
you are
See,
claiming
you
to
people
magic.
know it.
Yeah.
You might not see it tonight.
You're claiming to magic.
Listen to this
That's all
over
you're
and
saying.
over
I'm not
again and
claiming-
listen
no,
to
we're
him
claiming-
avoid the question.
We're claiming
'cause you all
revelation
know
from
it.
God, and then we say, "What are you claiming?" You're saying, "You know, I don't know. What are you talking? What is certainty?"
Well,
You're
I'm not-
basically saying, "You know
look.
what?" And this is where, when I get with an honest atheist, and it's not on their radio program, they'll say, "You know what? You're right. I can't be certain about anything."
Well, no, I was about to tell you something. I was about to tell you that anything that I told you that I'm pretty sure I know, not everything, but some things that I told you, I'm pretty sure of this. I could be wrong about
Okay,
that.
so the
and I'm
things that you
hold
could
on,
be,
see, hold
what
on. That's
are
what you
they?
do. You wait for someone to say I could be wrong, and then you dogpile and you don't let them finish, and then you quote mine.
No,
and that's
you
why people
said you
don't
couldn't
trust
be
you,
wrong.
Eric. That's why they don't trust you. That's why they don't like your cameras in their face, and they won't talk to you. Let me finish. I'm honest enough to say I could be wrong about a lot of things, but that's only because I'm realistic and I know that my intelligence has grown over my lifetime, and things that I thought I was certain about, I later went, oh, wait a minute. I actually learned additional information. So because I'm being realistic, you trap me into this box and say I know everything or I can know everything because of God.
That's not what we said.
Hang on, you said that you could be wrong about a lot of things. What can't you be wrong about?
Yeah, that's the real question.
What can't I be wrong about?
What can you not be wrong about?
What'd you say? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm on Price is Right. What number? Yeah, I mean, yeah, are you going to go back to the brain in the vat thing? No matter what I think, it's a brain in a vat. I mean,
I think that it's been established.
It's exposing your worldview for what it is. And that's why I said when you push the atheist worldview to the end...
I don't think it's a bad worldview to be able to admit that you can learn something new and admit that you were wrong at one point.
Learning presupposes that God exists.
So what have you learned that you cannot be wrong about? Because this is your great worldview, that you can learn things. What have you learned that you cannot be wrong about?
Well, it's not that I've learned one single thing. When I say that I can't be wrong about everything, it's because that would mean two things are contradicting. So I couldn't be wrong about two things that were contradicting. So I couldn't be wrong about everything. But I mean, I don't know.
You can't be wrong about. You said I can't be wrong about everything.
Yeah,
okay,
I like Edward's answer. My existence. I would have to say I know that I at least exist.
How do you know that?
Yeah, here we go.
How do you know that?
I don't. Okay. So,
and you don't have an out. This is where the atheist worldview leads to absurdity. And
you let that nigga claim like that? Do you believe in the burden of proof?
I believe in a burden of proof? Yeah, of course. I believe all non-Christian worldviews have a burden of proof. How do you know anything without God? Anything. How do you know it's wrong to eat animals without God?
Wait, earlier you were saying that Christianity...
Yeah? Yeah? What about it?
Okay. So you were saying that the reason why you know truth is because you know the opposite is impossible. That's the opposite of burden of proof.
Not exactly that. It's that without it, you cannot prove anything, not even proof. So proof itself is unintelligible if you don't have a worldview that can account for how we can have such things as proof. Do you know anything without God?
Yes.
Like what?
I know I exist.
How do you know that?
How do you?
Don't turn it back on.
Okay.
You haven't answered the question. All you've done is stated the fact. So what you've done is called begging the question. That's a logical fallacy. I don't know if you know that.
I have class. All right. Thank you for the conversation. I have class.
It was just getting good. But here's the point. When he asked that question, and I asked him, how do you know that you exist? And you know what his answer is I know I exist. That's called begging the question. That's a violation of the laws of logic.
Right.
You again. Good to see you.
Yeah, I have a bit more time now. So
okay, yeah. Because you're always on the run.
Yeah, I had to go to work last time.
Okay, yeah.
I still do, but I have more time, so that's good. So, I'm an atheist. I'd like to pose the question first.
Yes.
If you'd allow me.
Yeah.
So, I was, raised Christian, right?
Okay.
And part of the reason I left the faith, part of the reason, not the majority of it, is because I did not believe there was adequate enough justification to say that there is a God.
Okay.
And so I have a few questions posed to you. They're all basically the same question, but
yes.
I have to frame it differently.
All right.
One, on what basis do you say that there is a God? Two, on what basis do you say that's the Judeo-Christian God? And three, on what basis do you say that your interpretation is correct?
Okay. Ready? Number one, on what basis do I say that there is a God? My position on the existence of God is that you know the existence of God based on the impossibility of the contrary. Listen very carefully. The impossibility of the contrary. If something is impossible to be true, then isn't the opposite proposition correct? So, for example, if the laws of logic must exist in order for you to deny the laws of logic, doesn't that prove the laws of logic? Yes or no?
The problem with what you're saying is that you're also violating the law of contradiction. I could replace everything I could replace the word God and everything that you said with Allah or Zeus.
Well, we haven't gotten to that part of the equation. I'm simply saying that my argument for the existence of God is that without God you can't know anything rightly.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, what do you know and how do you know it?
All right, so I
without God, don't appeal to God. How do you, as an atheist, know anything anything for certain.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you can make an epistemic case that no one, there's a certainty that we may be wrong about everything.
Okay, are you certain that we may be wrong about everything?
No, I'm not even certain about that.
Okay, so are you making a meaningful statement at this point, or a meaningless statement?
Well, no, that's still meaningful because
how is it meaningful if you don't know it for certain?
Because the approach that you're taking is a radical skeptical.
Is it true? Are you 100% certain of my skepticism?
Well, no.
So then why would you make the statement? This is what I'm saying. This is what happens to you when you deny your creator. You end up making self-repeating statements.
May I speak, please?
Well, I know, but you're not appreciating the fallacy of your logic.
No. The problem is the fallacy earlier. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Now, here's the problem.
Try it again. You don't know anything for certain, but try to make a statement.
If you allow me to speak, please.
Okay, sure.
All right.
I'm just going to ask you the same question now.
Okay. Hold on. Basically, knowledge, as defined, I think we agreed on this last time, is that knowledge is justified true belief.
Do you know for certain that knowledge is justified true belief?
Well, let me get to that, please. So the reason that we can have an intelligible conversation is that we are predicated on certain axioms, right? Logic, reason, and those axioms are tautological, meaning that they're self-justifying.
Guess what I'm going to ask you?
The reason, well, it's axiomatic, their assumption.
Guess what I'm going to ask you about the axioms?
How do you know?
No, I'm going to ask you, do you know for certain that they're axiomatic?
Yes.
I thought you could be wrong about everything you claim to know.
Well, here's the thing, that you're playing with words here.
No, I'm not.
Those are
not at all.
Axiomatic
This is not playing with words.
The reason...
You know, in philosophy, it's called a self-regress.
It's an infinite regress.
It's an infinite regress of ideas.
I know what an infinite regress is.
Good, because that's what you're committing.
But here's the thing, though. Just because it is, you could make the case that we ought to stop the infinite regress. That doesn't mean that we can stop the infinite regress.
If we could, you couldn't know it anyway, because according to you, you can't know anything for certain.
At some point, we.
Now, by the way, if you get that offended with back and forth, and he cut me off, I cut him off. If you're that sensitive and that offended, probably the microphone's not for you.
At some point, we all philosophically pull ourselves. To steal a phrase, pull ourselves up by some proverbial bootstraps. I mean, the assumptions that we're making right here is that one, we're conscious beings. Two, there's a separation between, our perception and our actual mind. I mean, even to make the claim that there is a God, you have to. Those are predicated on certain axioms that that there is a metaphysical God and that you can intelligibly argue for it. Two, that it's the God of the Bible. Three, that the Bible exists. Four, that it's accurate.
What I would tell you is that I can give you evidence that stacks up. Like, for example, I was just reading with great delight this week. I think it was on Fox News or something. There's multiple newsreels. They according to them, it's not political. Archaeologists in Israel, according to Haaretz, the paper that they're talking about archaeology all the time there. But this time, they found the city of Emmaus, which is mentioned in Luke chapter 24, verses 27, verses 1 and following.
That there's
Hold on a second. That archaeological discovery is very encouraging to me as a Christian, because I thought, oh, well, hey, for thousands of years now, they didn't know whether the town of Emmaus existed. Now, I have the Bible that tells me that Emmaus existed, absolutely, because Jesus was on the road to Emmaus with his disciples. But guess what? That encourages me as a Christian. But I can give you evidence that stacks all the way to the moon like that.
But the logical jump that you're making with that piece
no.
is that there's an
I'm not giving you. Yeah, I'm not giving you the evidence.
God.
Yeah, I'm not giving you the evidence.
Okay.
You know why?
Can you give me the evidence, please?
No, sir. The reason I would not give you that evidence is because that evidence would be interpreted according to your worldview. So what I'm saying is that your worldview dictates the way that you interpret the evidence. You're not neutral. You have a bias as you interpret the evidence.
And are you I think we
no, I'm not. No, I'm not. There is no such thing as neutrality. You're either interpreting everything Christian theistically or non-Christian theistically. That's it.
So on what basis can you say that your system of analyzing these claims is any better than mine? I mean,
well, because of two things. Number one, I haven't surrendered certainty the way that you have. I haven't surrendered logic. Number two, I told you already, because of the impossibility of the contrary, without God, you couldn't know anything rightly, and you have proven it to me.
No.
The minute you say you don't know anything for certain proves exactly what the Bible says.
You haven't proven that you can know anything for certain.
Well, I can, but that's predicated on your worldview. See, to me, I can interpret reality. I know why we're here. I know what a human being is. A human being is a creature created in the image of God. That's why you don't kill it in the womb or outside of the womb. Okay? But if your worldview dictates naturalism, if your presupposition is naturalism, that we are all in a naturalistic universe, in a closed system, then that worldview will preclude your interpretation of everything. Don't you see that?
Right, but you still haven't justified why a Christian worldview is any more reliable than a, say, naturalistic or rationalistic or...
Two reasons. Because I believe that the Christian worldview is internally and externally consistent, and I believe the competing worldviews are not.
How are they not consistent?
Well, because you say things like, I know for certain, I don't know anything for certain. You want to change your worldview now so you can know things?
All you've proven
is that you don't know anything.
Right.
So that's why I asked you, are you making meaningful statement or meaningless statement, sir?
Here's the thing.
No, I'm not. I don't adopt his worldview. I have a Christian worldview that says knowledge is possible because of God.
You're making a radical skeptical claim, and I don't buy into skepticism.
I'm not a skeptic. You are.
That is a skeptical claim, though.
What do you? That's a certainty claim.
No, that is a skepticism.
Please explain to me how me telling you that as an atheist, you don't know anything for certain, even as you have said.
Well, I'm not a skeptic. I'm an empiricist to begin with, right?
You know everything empirically?
No, because you can't.
So then you're not an empiricist.
That's not how that works.
Yes, it is, sir. In other words, as a Christian, I would not adopt empiricism as my ultimate worldview to interpret reality.
That's not how that works. That's not what empiricism means at all. I mean that empiricism...
How do you prove empiricism is valid?
Right, because it has various philosophical checks, right? It must adhere
Philosophy is not given to empiricism, sir. Empiricism is based on sense perception.
Right.
Philosophy is abstract. It's not material, it's not interpreted by sense.
Empiricism is a philosophical school of thought.
Can you bring me a law of logic?
A law of logic?
Yeah, can we see it? Can we touch it, taste it, or feel it?
It's intangible, but it doesn't mean
exactly. It's immaterial because it's abstract. So here's the question, as an atheist, how do we have abstract laws of logic? Where do we get those?
Again, I would argue that those are axiomatic, right? We have to...
Okay, how did we get axiomatic laws of logic?
Because there is no way of having an even intelligible conversation.
That's a logical fallacy called begging the question. You've asked the same question over again. I'm asking you to explain it.
No. Because here's the thing.
No, sir, hold on a second. You just committed a logical fallacy. I asked you, how do you know that the axiomatic laws of logic exist? And you know what you told me? You told me there are axiomatic laws of logic. That's a logical fallacy.
No, they're tautological. They're self-justifying. I mean, the fact that we can have an
Okay, let me ask you again. How do we have a tautological, axiomatic law of logic? I'm not asking you to say that we do. I'm asking you how we can have that.
You're asking me to justify something that doesn't need to be justified. I mean, the very fact that we're having an intelligible conversation is proof enough, right? That there, at some basis, we are assuming
that's a viciously circular argument, by the way.
These are circular.
So you're okay with circular arguments?
Because at some point you have to...
So if I say God exists because God exists, you're okay with that?
No, because that's still there is...
It's circular, just like your argument.
But that's something that we can scrutinize. We can't scrutinize reason.
But what are you talking about? There's people that don't agree on the laws of logic. Have you read a book of logic?
No,
There's competing views of logic, don't you know?
I know.
Right?
Right,
So, how do we determine the universal laws of logic?
Well,
see, this is exactly what happens when you reject your creator. You don't know yourself, you don't know the world around you, and you don't know God. It's the definition of being lost.
Okay,
and yet you're trying to tell us emphatically how reality works. The person that doesn't know where they came from, who they are, where they're going, and what the world around them is. And you're trying to interpret reality for us. Sorry, as a Christian, I simply don't accept your skepticism as the grid to interpret reality. Okay, you want to make another statement about certainty? How do you know anything for certain without God?
Well, like I said, because here's the thing, you're asking me to justify something that is already self-justified.
No, it's not. Have you heard of the philosophical problem of truth in many minds?
Absolutely.
Have you heard of solipsism?
Absolutely.
What is solipsism?
That's not relevant to this point right now.
Actually, it is. Because what's going on in your mind, it is absolutely relevant. What's going on in your mind may not be going on in the mind of the person next to you.
That has nothing to do with...
So then who arbitrates between the two of you to determine truth? Can you answer that question?
Well, here's the thing. At some point, you're kind of ignoring the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is that at some point...
Has it ever been true that only one person among the group is right and everybody else is wrong? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try to make this point without you interrupting me, please.
Go ahead.
So what I'm arguing is essentially that you and I,
yeah.
right, we both make axiomatic assumptions at some point where we, to steal a phrase again, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. That's one thing Sam Harris says, who's a philosopher, right? And so, to say that we need to justify things such as reason is itself cannot be intelligible unless we have an axiom for reason.
Could you be wrong about that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So then do you know that for certain, what you just said? So then why would you say it?
Well, the thing
If
is,
you can't know it for certain, how much of the pie of knowledge do you have in let's say all of life is contained here in this pie. How much of that pie of knowledge, as a sentient being, how much of that do you have?
how much of that do I have?
Yeah, what percentage would you argue you have of that?
Probably a pretty small amount.
Okay, do you think that
the humility.
do you think that the antithetical truth of your statement could be outside of your percentage of knowledge?
Sure, but
yes or no?
Yes.
So that means that you even say that the greater percentage of what's knowable is actually outweighs what you know. And you could be wrong.
That's exactly what I've been saying, and I say there's no problem.
And you call me a skeptic? You're the skeptic.
No.
You don't know anything for certain, and yet you're telling us here that you know for certain that we all live by these axioms. No, ma'am, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. My worldview is very simple. My worldview is very simple. Knowledge does not come from me. It is not derived from me. It doesn't come from this universe. It doesn't come from this system. It comes from the mind of God. And thankfully, God has revealed himself in such a way that we can know him.
Here's the problem with your statement, though. I could replace every single word you just said with Allah, Zeus, the ghost of my...
Well, try it, then you have a complete worldview. You know what the difference is? The difference is that as I study...
why you're right.
Yeah, two reasons. Number one, because when you do an internal critique of whatever worldview that you're talking about and an external critique of that worldview, first of all, it doesn't stack up to the Christian worldview. You mentioned Allah.
On what basis?
Internal contradiction and external evidence. Yeah.
Oh, so the Christian worldview is extremely consistent, correct?
Totally. Or else I wouldn't be a Christian. The Christian worldview is internally consistent, or else I wouldn't be a Christian. Of course.
My argument for the existence of God, ma'am, goes something like this. You ready? That God exists because he is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. When you reject God, intelligibility and predication, which means your attempt to try to describe or pontificate about things, is reduced to absurdity. And so the question coming back to you is, if you reject God, what do you know and how do you know it?
What do I know and how do I know it?
Yes, ma'am.
If I reject God?
Yeah, meaning now that you rejected God and you're operating on some non-Christian worldview, how do you know what you know? Wait a second, she can answer for herself.
I don't know. I'm searching all the time for
Exactly.
knowledge.
Exactly. So if you don't know, that you cannot make knowledge claims against the existence of God.
But I base my knowledge on evidence.
Okay, how do you know that that evidence is reliable?
How do you know the Bible's reliable? Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. I know it's a question for her. You guys know my answers because I'm a Christian. You don't like the answer, but that's my answer. But based on...
Because I can see it.
Okay, how do you know your senses are reliable?
Because I can feel it.
But that's called a viciously circular argument. What you said is, I know my senses are reliable because I sense that my senses are reliable.
How do you know the Bible is...
Because
like,
it is the... I'll say my argument one more time, okay? Oh, no, ma'am. I'll say my argument one more time. The argument for the existence of God goes like this. That God is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. Without him, you cannot know anything at all. So basically what I'm saying is that unless you have God, meaning itself collapses. You don't have the basis for meaning, morals, or beauty, aesthetics.
So I can't have morals because I don't believe in God?
Correct.
So I can't
Not consistently. No, I know you do, but the reason that you do... See, here's a very careful qualification we need to make. Christians are not saying atheists and agnostics don't know things. We're saying that according to your worldview, you don't know things. The reason you know things, like the reason that you know, for example, that you're twiddling around your necklace, is not because of atheism or agnosticism, it's because of Christian deism. I know you reject that because the Bible says you will, but in other words, agnosticism does not give you the basis for interpreting reality or metaphysics. Only the biblical worldview can give you the basis for interpreting reality. You see what I'm saying? And so if you want to try it again, you can say, well, I trust my senses because of my senses. I trust my reason because of my reason. philosophically, that's a viciously circular argument. You go nowhere. You prove nothing. And so only the Bible that accounts for all things, that accounts for the total worldview, actually gives you a consistent worldview. In other words, as a Christian, in order to prove Christianity, I don't adopt empiricism or rationalism or idealism, and that becomes the foundation of my worldview. Because then I would be those things, and I would no longer be a Christian. Does that make sense? Is definitely not a Christian, that's what he said. I don't know what his identity and his worldview was, whether agnostic or whatnot, but he proved what I have been doing here for the last over 10 years on this campus, that without the biblical Christian worldview, you can know nothing for certain. And if you can know nothing for certain, then whatever you're about to say on the microphone is absolutely meaningless.
No, I'm not. No.
How do you know anything apart from God?
How do I know anything? I'm sorry?
How do you know anything for certain apart from God?
That's a good question. You should look into...
no, I'm asking you.
Descartes. Descartes is a great philosopher.
Okay, yeah, but... Okay, so are you basing your epistemology on Descartes' philosophy?
No.
Okay, so how do
Descartes. It's Descartes.
Right, Descartes. How do you know anything for certain in your worldview?
How do I know anything for certain?
Yeah.
Define anything. Define that I'm here,
anything,
or
yeah.
that you're here.
Sure, anything. How do you come to an epistemological conclusion about anything? Could you be wrong about everything?
For sure.
So when you're about to speak, since you admitted to us now that you could be wrong about everything, are you about to make a meaningful statement or a meaningless statement? How do you know?
Well, I would say that everything that you're saying right now is meaningless.
Is that statement meaningful, what you just said?
I believe so.
So truth is subjective to you?
No. I'm trying to figure it out. If I'm
on
wrong,
the microphone right now.
If I'm wrong, then I try to get close towards the truth.
You know, the Bible says you're a philosophy student, right?
No, I'm actually a botany student. I study plants.
But you say you study philosophy?
Yeah, I study a lot.
Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, the Apostle Paul actually addresses philosophy. And listen to what he says here in the Bible, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. He says this, he says, the world, through its wisdom, never came to know God. In other words, all philosophy that is man-centered, doesn't matter if it's Platonic, doesn't matter if it's Kantian, doesn't matter if it's Descartes, all human philosophy that is rooted in human reason will never arrive at the knowledge of God. Why? Because God has made the wisdom of this world foolish through the cross of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so let's take...
In other words, you can't know truth, my friend, apart from Christ. And you just proved it to me.
You talk, you know, this is again, you know, you're kind of...
No, we're not on a timer here, man. It's okay. Listen, all I'm saying is that you can't know truth apart from Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And you just proved it to me. Since the last time you were on the microphone 2 minutes ago, have you now come to an epistemology that knows things?
I think your knowledge, your idea of knowledge and whether or not we can know things is very misguided.
Is that truth or not true?
Okay,
that statement.
I'm a scientist.
Is it true that you're a scientist or not? You know it for certain.
I believe so.
Now, I didn't ask you if you believe it. People believe they can fly. But do you know for certain that you're a scientist?
What's your point?
How?
You believe in God, right?
Because I study plants in a scientific way.
So you study plants, and that's how you come to a conclusion about truth?
Yeah.
You can't hear now?
Just like her. Just
you
like
believe in God, right?
Scientist.
You have a microphone, it works.
Oh, you can hear me though, right? You believe in
I don't
God,
talk
right?
to people off
God,
microphone. Right? If you want to talk, I'd love to talk to you on the microphone. Cool. So basically, you have another attempt. You have another attempt to say, I know things, but I don't know why I know them. Oh, but I know them because of subjective reasons.
Why do you believe in God?
But you believe in God.
Yes, well, I'm a Christian, but he's not.
How do you know that?
Yeah, how do you know that?
I have revelation from God.
How did you know? How do you know that?
Without.
From the devil. How did you know?
Hold on 1 second. I'll turn it back on. Let me just make this statement. The way that a Christian knows things for certain, unlike this gentleman here, is that without biblical Christianity, you can't know anything at all. In other words, Christianity is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. Without God and the Bible, you cannot know anything at all. And that gentleman right here just proved it to me time and time again by telling me that the reason he knows, well, I feel, or I think, or you know, I'm a scientist. I think, I kind of know, I don't know. So 1 second ago, he doesn't know anything, and now he knows everything. See, this is what happens to you when you deny God. You end up with futility and a darkened mind. It's basically like trying to jump out of a bottomless pit. You don't have a ground or a foundation for knowledge. And let's see if he has one now. It's been about a minute. His worldview is changing every second.
Can I talk now? Okay. After your
I don't know, are your statements meaningful or meaningless, sir? According to your worldview, not mine.
Man, this guy won't let me talk at all. No, seriously, can I talk? Like, can I turn off your microphone and have me say something? You can turn off my microphone and you can say something? Okay, so you don't want to be fair in a discussion. So that's pretty clear, for one thing. You control who says don't you say that you support free speech? Aren't you here because of free speech? So you're going to deny my free speech?
No, not at all. You can tell us how you know nothing again.
Okay, well, let's I'll start talking. You can stop talking. And I'll let you talk, and I won't interrupt, and we can have a conversation like that. Isn't that great?
Tell us how you know nothing
let's take a look at the word scientist as a definition. Okay, this has to do with the idea of a priori. This is what is true by definition of the word.
So you believe in absolute truth?
No, can I please talk? Please. This will take a minute, and I think all of the people here, we're all patient, we're all willing to hang out, we're here to listen. Okay, a priori knowledge. Let's take the idea of a scientist. What does that word mean? What does the word bachelor mean?
Nothing, according to you.
Can I talk? Like, seriously. Like, I just want to be able to talk without the sassy.
You're going in circles because you're making knowledge claims when you don't have a basis for knowledge.
Yeah, he's not going to let me
You have a problem with that?
Like, this is an idea that takes a little bit
He's saying, I know for certain that I don't know anything for certain.
Hey,
That's
man.
not rational. I'm going to make it very simple. You just corrected me, and you said, no, not atheist, agnostic. Right?
Yes.
You know what the word agnostic means?
I don't have a definition in front of me.
Gnosis, right? Gnosis, alpha privative. Gnosis is knowledge, no knowledge. So what agnosticism says is that a person does not have or cannot have or does not believe they can have absolute knowledge about any article of knowledge. So according to your worldview,
okay,
you don't know that Christianity
let me
is not
define
true.
my own agnosticism then.
Okay, so you want to make your own branch of agnosticism? Okay, go ahead. I'm just giving you the textbook definition of agnosticism. He can believe which means that you don't know for certain any one article of knowledge.
I do not believe that I know for certain that any religious text is true or untrue.
Do you know that for certain?
No. As I've said before, all I know is that I know nothing.
Then why are you
just as you do.
No, sir. No. See,
you come and you presume knowledge because of that book.
What you just said right now is not an agnostic claim, it's a knowledge claim. So you just violated your own worldview when you said, neither do you. Because now you're predicating knowledge about someone's worldview, which is the very thing you say you cannot do.
We all know that some of us clearly do not know that they know nothing. And it takes a certain amount of integrity and courage to admit that you know nothing, that you do not know what's out there in the universe.
Do you know that you do not know nothing?
So,
see the problem you're having? It's called an infinite regress of ideas. You have no infinite reference point. Therefore, knowledge claims are absurd in your worldview.
Because infinity is absurd.
Do you know that infinity is absurd?
Oh my God.
Welcome to your worldview.
It's a
you
valid
don't like
question.
it, do you? Because when you're held consistent, Cody, this is not a game. When you're consistently held to the conclusions of your worldview, you are now seeing the absurdity and what the Bible actually calls the futility of your mind when given your worldview. Only the biblical worldview gives you the necessary preconditions, meaning the necessary foundation for reason, for knowing, for knowledge, for dignity, for meaning, for worth. You know the reason why I reject abortion?
Okay,
is because morality
I have another
exists based on God's law. You were an atheist.
No.
Okay. Are you agnostic?
Yeah. Like it.
It's even worse because now you can't even know anything for certain.
Yeah, I can know things for certain after evidence.
How do you know that? Wait a minute. You're agnostic, so you said evidence. Evidence presupposes knowledge.
Yeah, evidence also helps out.
So you're not agnostic anymore? Now you claim to be able to know and interpret things? I know you don't like the questions, but these are based on statements you're making, my friend.
not even freaking mad. It's just try to follow your like mental gymnastics with this.
It's really not hard. You said I'm agnostic. I'm saying that means you can't interpret evidence.
Let me ask you.
At least not according to your worldview.
Let me ask you a question about your worldview in the Bible that you like to carry around.
Yep.
So you said that God started everything. Like He created everything. He put plants, people, and
Yeah, created everything out of nothing for His glory.
okay. So where's the proof?
Well, the Bible.
But the Bible is a book that's just a collection of stories that have been passed down from word of mouth.
So,
Let me finish. From word of mouth.
No, that's false. I mean, that's absurd. What you're saying is absurd. I've been studying the composition and transmission of the Bible for almost as long as, probably longer than you've been alive, and that is just absolutely ridiculous reconstruction of what happened in the Bible.
So,
I'd be glad to talk to you about canonicity or bibliology if you'd like to.
So you're saying that somebody.
But if you want to reduce the Bible to the telephone game, I mean,
no, it
that's
basically
absurd.
was for the longest time.
Uh-huh.
It was written down, transcribed, put away in a book, and then converted into multiple.
You asked me what evidence do I have?
Yes.
As an agnostic, how is evidence going to be rational as an agnostic?
Evidence, because if you have valid proof, valid things to
How is
back up,
proof rational for an agnostic when there's no method of knowing?
How is proof rational to a person who carries around the Bible?
You wouldn't know because you're an agnostic.
Yeah,
See,
but-
when you say you're agnostic, you have surrendered the possibility of knowledge.
Yeah, but I have.
And once you surrender the possibility of knowledge, everything you're about to say is absurd.
Says the guy who stands.
Unless you want to abandon agnosticism.
I
Try something else.
Okay, so.
Caramba. Because when you say, my friend, I am agnostic, you're identifying in a worldview that says, agnostic means agnosis, no knowledge. No, ma'am. No. Agnostic means that you are not capable of knowing things for certain, period.
Okay, well, you're categorizing it. Maybe he's not trying to say, like, I'm the clear definition of agnostic. Maybe he's just trying to look for an answer, and he wants you to bring him some sort of proof. You don't need to refute his argument simply because that's.
I'm
like,
trying to show that the
definition
nature of his
means that-
presuppositions precludes the argument. If you're agnostic, according to his worldview, as an agnostic, the real question we should ask an agnostic is this: is your question meaningful or meaningless? And how do you know it?
But like he's saying, you're categorizing people who are agnostic. That's like me categorizing all Christian entities as little boy touchers.
Well, that's absurd, but if you want to categorize my worldview, you could say something like this, and this would be fair. You're a Christian, and therefore you're going to interpret everything based on the Bible. That's correct. You're agnostic, and you're going to interpret everything along agnosticism. Or do you want to abandon your worldview and adopt empiricism? I mean, then you wouldn't be an agnostic anymore. You see how worldviews work?
I see how worldviews work, but I think yours is more twisted than a pretzel.
You would never know because you're agnostic.
I would know because I grew up in a Baptist.
You know what you're
home,
like? This is what you're like. You're sitting here telling us dogmatically, I know for certain that I don't know anything at all.
Yeah, and so do you.
Folks, that's another knowledge claim.
Oh my God, like you believe.
That's why I like you, man, because, despite the fact that you bring teddy bears to my microphone, you're at least willing to sit here, and even though you contradict yourself openly, you still want to debate.
You have 2 weeks worth of yourself contradictory. I've sat out here for.
What is contradiction in an agnostic worldview?
What's a contradiction to a Christian worldview?
Well,
you tell me, come on. Does Big Bad God have a problem?
Well, I can give you the
what I
answer.
say?
Well, I can give you the answer, but you don't like it because you're agnostic.
I don't like it because I'm agnostic. I don't like it because your worldview.
You know, folks. Here's the deal: is the reality.
Crapping on everyone.
Being on this campus for over 10 years, I've at least concluded one thing: is that people say I'm agnostic. They think it's like a cool thing to be, when really it reduces your worldview to absurdity. Because what you're saying is, I don't believe that knowledge and certainty in epistemology is possible, but I'm going to make epistemic claims, and I'm going to claim certainty, which is called a contradiction. The minute you make a knowledge claim, you're no longer agnostic. So you have to either abandon agnosticism and adopt something else, or you have to acknowledge that you have a contradiction, and that's what you have.
I don't.
You get on the microphone because I don't want to have two conversations going at once.
That's what Christianity Oh,
I'm a Christian. I'm Christian. I mean, I'm Baptist. I'm Reformed. Calvinist.
Somebody
those
asking
things.
you something this last year, and you said something along the lines of evangelics.
I'm evangelical in the sense that yes, I believe the gospel is the truth. I believe the gospel of Jesus Christ. Yeah, in that sense, I'm evangelical. But this is Exhibit A of what happens to you when you reject your Creator. You start making statements that are self-refuting and absurd, and that's because the Bible tells you when you reject God, you have the only thing you have left is a futile mind, futility. The Bible calls it. When you reject God, you have futility. What does futility look like? The word futility literally means frustration. It means thinking that is worthless. And that's exactly what happens when you reject your Creator. You're no longer capable of making rational statements that are consistent. The Bible says you are without a defense for your worldview. It's literally that you have no apologia, no defense for your worldview, based on the fact that you rejected God. And agnostics like this young man prove it every time. Yes, sir.
So you're saying you believe in you believe in...
I'm agnostic, which means that I believe that anything could be real because I don't believe anyone actually knows because it's arrogant to know.
So as
or
an
to think
agnostic,
you know.
are you making meaningful statements right now or meaningless statements?
What? What are you saying? Because I don't hear anything meaningful coming from you.
Well, you've been listening to me, so you know what I'm saying. But as
I really don't. That's the problem. You go in circles
agnostic,
and don't actually give a real answer.
As an agnostic, how do you know that your statements are either meaningful or meaningless?
I don't. I admit my ignorance.
Why would you
I
say
admit
it?
my ignorance to knowing
So
what
that you-
happened because no
okay,
one
so that
could
you
know
be
how we
ignorant-
came to be.
So that you could be ignorant as to whether or not Christianity is true.
And
or
you
not.
could be ignorant to where you
There's
could be completely
no,
wrong.
No, hold on. That's not an ignorant claim. That's a knowledge claim. When you say that
You're
I
saying-
could be ignorant of it, you're already concluding
Okay, so
that
you're
you
saying-
know something
sir.
about somebody else. So you have just literally refuted your own position.
Sir, so you're saying in a universe that is infinite with infinite
How
possibilities.
do you know that it's infinite, ma'am? You're agnostic.
Oh, science, sir.
How do you know that science is valid?
I'm giving you. No, I'm not. I'm willing to listen to your answer, which you won't even give. Where does truth, morals, meaning, and beauty, where do they come from?
It's a process of constant. We don't know the ultimate answer yet, but we continue to figure out. And when you
Right.
say that one text
Right.
has all
So you
the
don't know.
answers, of course not. You don't know
Neither-
either. You're just pretending you do.
No, hold on. That's a knowledge claim. What you just did there is contradict what you just said. When you just said neither do you, that's a knowledge claim. That's not an agnostic position. That's a knowledge claim. So now do you want to take back your worldview and start over again? Because now you're making knowledge
I genuinely
claims.
don't know what you're saying. What's the argument you're making?
Now listen carefully again. You are making knowledge claims as an agnostic. Am I wrong about that?
Like I'm claiming that I know. No, I'm not claiming that I know things. I don't like.
Is it true that you're
knowledge-
not claiming that you know things?
Not everybody knows everything because
Is
nobody.
it true that not everybody knows everything?
Nobody can be absolutely certain about anything.
Is
I
it
think
true
it's
that
a
nobody
grown-up
can be
thing to
absolutely
do.
certain about everything?
No.
Is it true that the answer is no?
The answer to what?
What you just said to my question.
Not everybody. Yeah, for sure. Nobody can be absolutely certain about anything.
Is
You
it
can
true?
be certain enough
Well,
to
hold on a
act
second.
on things.
Hold on a second. So is it absolutely true that no one can know anything for certain? Think about the absurdity of what this gentleman is in at this point.
Is it absolutely true that no? I didn't say nobody can know. I'm saying nobody does know at the moment.
That's a
why
knowledge
we continue to have
claim.
this
That's a knowledge
conversation.
claim. How do you know that, sir?
How do you know that the
You
Bible
just,
is true?
hold on, sir. You just made a knowledge claim right after you said we can't know for certain.
So okay, so I think you're doing. Are you talking about the paradox of like?
This is what happens to you when you deny your creator, folks. You say things like, I know for certain that we don't know anything for certain.
You're just playing a childish game with language.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
using
okay.
logic
Here's
and
what, okay, so
reason.
this is the paradox of like, oh, there are no absolute truth claims, and then somebody says, but that's an absolute truth claim, right?
Yep, that's right. It's
There
called
is
an infinite
implied-
regress.
The implied thing is that the only absolute truth is that there are no absolute truths. Like that's
That's
the
right.
implication.
Yes, sir. It's called in philosophy, it's called an infinite regress. And it's a problem of truth in many
So you
minds.
created God. You can also do an infinite
That's a
regress with that.
that's a logical fallacy. God is eternal. There is no creation.
The universe is eternal.
Creation is a
There's no creation
creaturely word. Hold on a second. Creation is a creaturely category. It doesn't apply to the eternal God of the Bible. Sorry.
The universe is
Keep
eternal.
the sidewalks clear. Everybody here for the Dean of Students coming through, please. And for everyone. I always get corrected for that part. And for everyone. Not just for the Dean of Students.
For safety.
That's right, for safety. So once again, we have an agnostic student before us who is telling us, number one, he doesn't know anything for certain, and he's told us nobody does. On multiple occasions, he has said no one knows anything. But see, when he says no one knows anything, he could just say no one knows X. That is no longer agnosticism. Now, that's a knowledge claim.
I mean, you could be an adult. I could be an adult and say there's a small possibility that other people might know something for certain, which is why I keep asking
But you would know
what
it.
is the
But you would not know it.
What do you mean I would not know it?
Because you're agnostic, you wouldn't know if someone knows something for certain.
The thing is, I could
Don't you see how ludicrous
solve
that
this problem
sounds?
you're presenting to me by just saying I have faith without believing in the Bible in particular.
I didn't say
don't
that.
have to go to the Bible to solve this problem. If you're saying I need to take for granted,
Of course you do, because without God you can't know anything for certain, and you've proven it to us time again. The more you keep talking, the more you validate my point.
The claim that you know God is also a knowledge.
It's like Shakespeare said, fast and furious signifying nothing. And if that's all you are, why engage in a conversation about absolute truth?
I'm not engaging in a conversation. I'm saying you.
Well, you are.
I'm asking you for evidence
You're
over and
here.
over again that you have absolute truth. Because if you take what you're saying is true, that gay people are going to go to hell, that X, Y, and Z people are going to go to hell, acting on that would require berating people, ruining their quality of life while we're here right now, fucking with them, ruining friendships. So yeah, I think you have to be pretty certain of that. And I'm saying maybe we can all be grown up and say
And you've admitted it's possible that I can't know these things because in your worldview, you don't know. So if you don't know, then you have to allow for the possibility that what I'm saying is true, and that that I know these things. And so what I'm saying is that area of your agnosticism, that it is possible for me to know that my worldview is true, number one, and number two, that the things I'm saying are true. I'm saying, yeah, that's my reality. Thank you.
What, that it's possible?
No. That in your worldview, the fact that it is possible that I do know things for certain, that is true. And you cannot, in your agnostic worldview, prove that it's not. So thank you for the conversation.
I'm saying that you don't have any evidence to affirm that we should absolutely take the Bible.
As an agnostic, what good is evidence if you can't know it to be true?
What do you mean? What good is evidence if you can't know it to be true?
Sir. As an agnostic, what you're saying is we can't know truth for certain, right?
Yeah.
So if I present you with evidence, you wouldn't know it to be true.
It's not about
Don't you see a problem with it?
knowing for sure. It's about, okay, you're saying we should act a certain way because X things are true. So if you're saying, like, I should walk in that well because it's not a lava chasm, I don't have to be 99.99% certain evidence, have extraordinary evidence. It's common fucking sense.
It could be, watch your language, please. Any evidence at all, it doesn't have to be that elaborate. It can be any evidence whatsoever. But in an agnostic worldview, evidence itself is unknowable.
It's not about knowing for sure. It's about knowing enough to
I'm
be able
saying
to
it's
act
not
on
about
these
knowing
things with
anything.
ability.
No.
All you need to do is be certain.
Probability is your worst nightmare. If this is the pie of all knowledge, how much of it do you have?
Very small amount. Just like
exactly. So probability is something so infinitely removed from the realm of your knowing, because you could say this: I know A because of B. Watch this carefully. I know A because of B. I know B because of C. I know C because of D. Don't you understand what's going on there? What you do is you have an infinite regression where you never arrive at truth.
As the A in that scenario. That's
I don't just make that.
And you say that it's
so here's my
eternal, but
argument.
You're still saying God is A in that scenario.
If you listen carefully, my argument is very simple. It's this: I presuppose God as I prove the existence of God.
That's circular.
So what?
What do you mean? So if something is a circular claim, I can claim that about anything.
No,
I'm completely correct. You know why? Because I say I am. I presuppose that I'm correct. Therefore, I just prove that I'm correct.
No,
it's
sir.
a non-argument.
No, that's a vicious circular argument. A virtuous circular argument is when you're trying to argue for your ultimate authority and truth claim. So, for example, you believe in reason?
What do you mean by believe in reason?
In other words, do you believe in logic, reason?
I think logic is a very useful tool that is more reliable than just relying on the edicts of an old text. But I wouldn't. But I'm sure there's limitations. For example, like it's hard to process your own emotions using a logical schema.
Everything that you're saying right now, sure, and you can give us a whole lecture on it, right? And that's fine. So my question that I'm going to ask you is, when you give us a lecture on logic, do you use logic when you do that?
No, I think.
Excuse me, no? Did you say no?
Yeah, for sure.
How do you give a lecture without logic, about logic?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So like, it makes more
Try
sense.
it again, man.
It makes more sense to presuppose that you have to use logic than it does to presuppose that there's an omnipotent, omniscient being who specifically doesn't like gay people. Specifically.
Okay, well, yeah, but you're already getting to a conclusion. You're already getting to a conclusion about something. But what I'm saying is, fundamentally, how do you validate reason without reason?
How do you validate God? You can look. You can have.
So you don't want to answer my questions. You just want to repeat
How do you
my
validate
question with a
reason with
question.
that reason? Because people operating with a reason mindset
Uh-huh.
do well. People who operate only on religion do not.
That's a logical fallacy called begging the question. By using it, you don't actually answer it. I asked you, how do you validate your reason without your reason? How do you do that?
Because when people have reasonable discourse, over time they end up creating wonderful inventions to
Do they use their reason while they create wonderful X, Y, and Z?
For sure, you have to use a
Okay,
scientific
so
method
that
to do that. You have to have thousands of failures.
you admit to the circularity of what's known as rationalism, right?
Circularity, how is it circular? I'm saying that it's effective. It works in the real world. I'm not saying that.
Your argument is not getting at the basis of what's known as the transcendental foundation of the worldview that you're espousing here. If you listen carefully to what I'm saying, I'll say it again, but if you listen carefully to what I'm saying, you accuse me of being circular in my reason.
Yeah.
What I'm telling you is that when you're accounting for certain absolute claims, circularity is necessary. For example, a rationalist uses reason to establish rationalism.
If you say circularity is necessary,
an empiricist uses empirical evidence to establish empiricism,
but you can
correct?
cut out the middleman. For example, like I said before, I have faith that helping people is the right thing, and I have faith that like making people happy and
Not
smile is the
answering
right
the
thing.
questions. I appreciate the conversation, but you're not answering the question. I'm asking you, how do you validate your reason without your reason? And you've told me, you've given me examples of reason. That's all you've done.
I think we have a language barrier here. What do
Yeah,
you
I
mean
think so, too.
validate? Like, do you mean like
Validate. Exactly what you're telling me. Can't you validate Christianity? Can you authenticate Christianity? Can you give me
I can
proof for
authenticate
Christianity?
reason as a practice and a logical schema to use?
And do you
in
use
life.
reason when you do that?
I don't use reason. I use the observation of the world around me. Those are two different things.
Wait a minute. The observation of the world around you is accessible to you without reason? So now are you an intuitionist or what?
You're trying to classify my philosophy.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, it's very simple.
It's called the history of philosophy, the origin of ideas. Everyone has them. They're inescapable. There's no way around it.
What I'm saying is that
you may not be mature enough to know where you fit, but you fit somewhere.
how much you need to be certain about things depends on what course of action something being true would imply that you have to take. So, for example,
You're making meaningless statements because you're assuming your reason while you reason with me, and you're saying that you don't have to give a...
I'm not assuming reason.
Yes, you are.
I'm saying...
You certainly haven't vindicated your reason. How do you know you're here? It's simple as this, my friend. How do you know, not as a Christian, don't speak as a Christian. How do you, as a non-Christian, how do you know you're not a brain in a vat? Okay, like our 21st century analogy. How do you know you're not in the Matrix? How do you know you're not in Elon Musk's digital simulation? How do you know that you're not in a room, a padded room somewhere with a needle in your back, and you're imagining this conversation?
I don't need to know that. That's what.
Well, okay, that's
comes
not.
back to like what
Again,
you need to know
again, that's a non sequitur. Right, that's a non sequitur, irrelevant thesis argument. When I ask you how do you know, and you say I don't need to know, that doesn't answer the question,
You're
sir.
deliberately framing the question and assuming that like we need to know for
No,
sure.
you don't
that
like
we're
the
not a brain
question.
or
That's the
something.
problem.
You don't like my answer. That's the
You haven't given an answer. You gave an irrelevant thesis
You've
in
been
logic.
going on tangents asking me
No,
questions
sorry.
where you said if you have a question about the Bible, come up here. And now
I
you're
asked
turning
you-
around and are continuing
Okay, well-
to critique other people's worldviews.
We'll try it again, folks. We'll try it again. How do you know that you're not a brain in a vat? You're not in a
Why do
padded
I need
room?
to know
That's right.
that?
And so his answer to that is, why do I need to? Don't you see that's called an irrelevant thesis? That's a logical fallacy. It doesn't answer the question. It doesn't answer the
Even if I
question.
believe for 100% sure that I was a vat somewhere,
Yeah?
like that wouldn't change how I act and operate in the world. So it doesn't.
No.
matter.
There's that wind. Because they said 40-mile-an-hour gust today. That's pretty good. But
That's a perfect example of why the scientific method is more reliable in our day-to-day lives.
but you wouldn't know it.
It's determined.
But you wouldn't know it because you're agnostic.
You know, I've observed that the scientific method over the course of my life has relied in more
As
accurate
an
predictions and has
agnostic,
been more useful to me.
what you're doing is assuming the validity of your senses. Like your reason, your senses are also something that you assume to be reliable, and you cannot validate why they're reliable.
I can validate it because when I operate based on my senses, like for example, there's a car in the way. I
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's
go
a
in the
logical
road.
fallacy called begging the question. What you're saying is that I validate my senses by using my senses. Don't you see the problem with that? Well, hold on a second. I never said that I never said I had a problem with circularity. Circularity is necessary when you're trying to account for the totality of your worldview.
Right. I'm like,
Yeah.
So we can go circular here too. I believe in my senses because my senses have been accurate over time, and to not believe in my
But the
senses
problem-
would be contrary to my senses. That's
Right.
a virtuous circle, not a what'd you call it, a vulture?
It's a vicious circular, because your circular reason does not account for, it doesn't account for everything in your worldview. It's only your personal worldview. It doesn't give us an ultimate infinite standard by which we can know all things.
I think most people would say, using my senses is
Now you have once you talk about, okay, I accept, here's the thing. Once you say, let's just say, because you did already, let's just say you say, okay, I accept I'm circular too. I use my reason to prove my reason, right? Once you say that, now you have what philosophers call the problem of truth in many minds. Because what's going on in your brain is not necessarily going on in my brain.
Right.
And so how do you know that what's going on in my brain does not refute what's going on in your brain? Don't you see the problem?
It's not observing the world around me. So if I say there's no cars in the street,
You can observe it all you want.
say there's cars in the street, right?
You can observe it all you want, but it's not necessarily what I'm observing.
Sure, it's not what you're
So
observing.
you're
But
back
if you
to
go in
square
it, if
one.
you play in traffic, you will die.
So you're
and
back to
everyone else
square
around
one.
us goes, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that guy wasn't correct that there was no traffic. All right, we can move on with our lives.
Yeah. So you're back
Same schema.
Sure, you're back to square one, which is I don't know anything for certain.
I don't understand how that's relevant. What are you talking about?
Well, if you don't know anything for certain, this conversation in your worldview is
I know
meaningless.
things
Every
for
word
certain.
that's about to come out of your mouth, is meaningless in your worldview. Because here's why: it could be meaningful, but it could not, and we don't know. And so
We
what
can know based on what happens when we act on what we think is true.
that is
All the
assuming
time.
the validity of your reason and objective truth. Yes, it is, sir. You said we can know. So now you're accounting not only for the validity of your reason, but the validity of
It's not
everyone
just
else's
reason, it's
reason?
observing the world around us.
No, sir. It doesn't work that way. Sorry. That doesn't lead you to an infinite standard of
Why do we need
knowing.
an infinite standard of knowing? Why do
Because
we-
if not, then who arbitrates? We're back to square one.
What do you mean who arbitrates?
Yes.
Again, the actual results of our actions as we observe them arbitrate.
You can't have absolute standards of meaning, morals, beauty.
Why do you need absolute standards? At one time we thought,
Why do you need absolute
dating a
standards?
child was okay. Then over time we
Because
realized
if you
that
don't have
children can't
absolute
consent.
standards, then you have subjective standards. Then you have
We have
conventions of
standards
man.
that constantly improve
Are you okay?
as we
All right.
observe the world around us.
We'll
and see
find
the
out if
results
you,
of our
yeah, we'll find out if you care about absolute standards or not. So what you're saying right now is that there is no absolute morality?
Wait, I'm confused as to why that's relevant.
Because you're the one that brought up the fact that we don't need absolute standards. And I'm saying, yes, you do. And if you don't have an
We
absolute
need to
standard of
assume-
morality, what do you have?
We need to act as if some things are absolutely true, even if they're not.
That's not the question I asked you. That's not the question I asked you. The question you're wanting to answer is called pragmatism. But I didn't ask you about pragmatism.
But
I
that's what
asked
I'm
you.
affirming.
What's that?
That's what I'm affirming. So you're asking
I know
me
you
to
are,
defend a worldview
but
I
I'm
don't
at
have.
right. But I'm actually pointing you towards the conclusion of your argument. The necessary consequence of your argument is that there's no absolute morality. If there's no absolute morality, then you have no right to object to any morality. Don't you see that? You
Of course I
don't.
have the right. Of course I have the
On
right
what
to object.
basis? On what basis?
Let's remove the abstraction of morality. I have the right to object to other people's actions. I don't have to apply a normative statement to it.
So what? It's not going to be meaningful.
Sure, we have faith that it's meaningful.
So what if you have faith?
We have faith that it's wrong to hurt other people, and if everybody acted that way, we'd get much better results than having faith that conversion therapy is okay or something like that, because maybe in the afterlife something will improve.
Uh-huh.
So, like, again, acting on the world around us instead of the hypothesized abstract world or afterlife you talk about has a much better observable success rate.
You wouldn't know it.
What do you mean I wouldn't? I see
You
it. I
surrendered
see
knowledge
it.
at the beginning of our conversation. You said we can't know things for certain.
If you step out of this abstract framing, and
Why?
you just look
So you
around
want to
the
live in
world-
hypothetical? I don't live in hypothetical world, sir. I live in the real world.
I live in the real world, too.
Where you, no, apparently you don't. Well, you wouldn't know if you lived in the real world because according to you, we can't know anything for certain.
I know, I'm certain enough that I live in the real world. Everybody else is certain enough.
How
that
do
we're
you?
going to continue to-
Whoa, wait a minute. Now you're stipulating what other people know for certain. How do you know that?
I mean, do y'all know that killing is wrong enough
No,
that
no,
you
no,
wouldn't do it?
But
I mean, come on.
even asking them presupposes that you can have objective knowledge of what other people know.
I'm asking.
You're no longer, man. I tell you what.
People
You're like this. You're like this, man. It's like today. I'm agnostic. I'm not agnostic. I am agnostic. I'm not agnostic.
You're trying to create a false taxonomy of beliefs so that you can easily
No,
attack
sir.
with pre-rehearsed
No,
arguments.
this is the thorny problem with worldviews. You either have a consistent one or you don't, and you certainly do not.
My worldview, again, is that
you borrow from Christianity in order to substantiate a knowledge claim, and then when you make a knowledge claim and you follow to its logical conclusion, then you default back to Gnosticism.
My
agnosticism.
worldview is that how certain we have to be about a given truth claim
Anything
depends
at all.
on the observed.
I want to know if you have any certainty whatsoever, any whatsoever.
I
don't
have
think you
different
do.
amounts of certainty about different aspects of the world. For example, I'm reasonably certain that I'm standing on the ground right now to the point where I wouldn't act as if I'm not. However, I am not reasonably certain that in the afterlife, a majority of my friends will burn in hell forever because they didn't subscribe to your God. The latter claim requires much more certainty than simply saying that the ground around me exists, because acting on that worldview would imply a much more drastic course of
Yeah, it
action.
must be nice to sit here and talk about all the things that you know, even though you have a worldview
I never said I
that
know.
says at the very
I said
beginning
how
you
certain
can't
I can
know.
be. It's not either I know or I don't know. It's how certain can I be.
So once again, folks, Exhibit A, this is what happens to you when you reject your Creator. You are fast and furious, signifying absolutely nothing. You can sit here all day and stipulate the things that you don't like about Christianity, but at the end of the day, you could be wrong. Matter of fact, he said, yeah, I could be wrong and you could be right. And therefore, he has no basis to morally or philosophically object to anything.
We have to be more certain
The best thing
about knowledge.
the best thing an agnostic,
to others.
the best thing an agnostic can do is to do nothing.
See, you're
Because
talking past me now because you don't want to engage in the argument. That's another common tactic of evangelicals. It happens over and over again. When you realize that you're not going to convince somebody with half-baked arguments, you look to the crowd for approval.
Like what?
Or look for people who are
I'd like
more
you to
receptive.
point out one, sir. Just one half-baked argument, sir.
I've been pointing them out over and over again.
I haven't heard one.
You keep on describing my claim of
Try this
somewhat
again.
certainty as absolute certainty. You keep on describing my claim that we can't be absolutely sure about anything, but we can be reasonably sure about some things as me making an absolute knowledge claim. You keep on describing me as an agnostic when I did not say that.
I think it's very simple. Listen to what you just said. You said my claim of not being able to know anything for certain, and then to have some certainty of something. That's called a self-refuting argument. Well, you just said it's self-refuting. Thank you for the conversation. But it shows once again why agnosticism is futility.
You're playing games with language. What I meant by certainty is confidence. I could be reasonably confident, again, that the ground I'm standing on is real, that that guy's wearing a MAGA
Yeah, you're
hat,
wrong about that.
you're standing on the chair.
No, you're wrong about that.
I could be reasonably confident.
If you just study the history of philosophy, this is why philosophers...
Look around at the world around you. Why do I need to study the history of philosophy to know that he's wearing a MAGA hat, he's wearing headphones, and you're wearing a blue polo? Why do I need to study philosophy to know that? That's an absurd burden of proof.
How do you know it's absurd, sir? You don't know anything for certain.
It's common sense.
How do you know that it's common sense, sir? You don't know anything for certain, according to you.
You don't know anything for certain either. You're just pretending.
That's a knowledge claim. That's not an agnostic claim. You
Could
see,
you
this
define
is
knowledge
this
claim
is what's called the frustration of your worldview. This gentleman wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to say is like, no, I stick to the fact that we don't know anything for certain, but I know that you're wrong. That's a knowledge claim. So he just refuted his
I can
worldview.
be reasonably confident that you're wearing a blue polo.
Reasonable confidence is not certainty, sir.
You don't have to have certainty. You just need
Are
a
you
reasonable
certain?
amount of confidence.
Are you certain that you don't have to have certainty?
I don't need to be certain about that either.
Are you certain that you don't need to be certain?
I am reasonably confident that I don't need to be
Are
certain.
you certain that you're reasonably certain?
What?
Exactly.
What is the question? Am I certain?
What he's saying is, I know A because of B, I know B because of C, I know C because of D. It's called an infinite regression.
You describe A as God.
This is what happens to you when God gives you over to your devices.
For me, A is observing the world around me.
When the man is the measure of all things, he knows nothing
For
for
me,
certain.
my basis is observing the world around me. That's A. For
The Bible
you,
calls
your
it
basis is an
darkness.
abstract argument that requires an absurd burden of proof.
You wouldn't know it, sir. You wouldn't know it.
I wouldn't know what. Again,
Anything.
you don't need to be certain. You just need to be reasonably confident.
How'd you like that, guys? How you guys like that? You don't need to be certain. You just need to be reasonably certain. It's called your worldview is arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary.
It fails on logical fallacies,
You
sir.
don't play in traffic because you need to be very certain that there is no cars.
Okay, I'm going to let you guys in on a big secret. Here you go. Ready? My friend here, even though he claims to be agnostic,
I never said I was agnostic. You just made
as
that
a Christian, my friend here actually knows things, but not because of his worldview, because of mine. The Bible says all people know God. They know He exists. They know in their heart of hearts that that he exists, that he is eternal, that he created you, and that you're accountable to him. And in your heart of hearts, you know it to be true.
You're making a knowledge claim now. How do you know what's in the
Oh yeah,
heart?
of course, because
How
I'm
do you
not
know what the
agnostic.
heart of hearts about it? How do you know that Christianity...
I'm making
has
knowledge
been
claims, sir,
around-
because I never surrendered knowledge like you did.
The history of humanity is over 10 times as old as the history of Christianity. So the idea that we didn't know anything before Christianity is absurd. The history of writing predates Christianity. Do we not know anything about writing before Christianity?
History presupposes deduction. Deduction presupposes logic, which you cannot know in an agnostic universe or an agnostic
based
worldview.
on the evidence
Welcome to your
reasonably
worldview.
certain.
Welcome to your worldview. Of being reasonably certain as a person that doesn't know anything for certain. Welcome to your worldview.
I didn't say certain, I said reasonably
Yeah.
confident.
That's why you
Certainty
can't define.
implies an absolute
Yeah, that's why
amount.
you can't define an absolute standard of good without borrowing from the Christian worldview. I bet you live like a Christian every day.
Actually,
every single day you live like a Christian, don't you?
Oh, because like I don't kill people or something? Like,
Of course, you don't murder. I hope not.
People.
When you go to a cash register, you demand exact change for things that you. Have you ever bought a car?
No, all I'm saying.
Okay, I've bought many cars. Have you ever bought a car, you students? You bought a car, you go to the finance office, it's horrible. It takes forever, you're in there all night, okay, negotiating and haggling back and forth. You look at about 20 lines of your finances, you want every single penny to be accounted. What if that finance guy turned to you that night and goes, hey man, you're agnostic, so am I. What's the price of the car? Don't worry about it. We're agnostic. It's just what's a few $1,000 between an agnostics? It could be 1,000. It could be 100. What does it matter?
I can be
You
reasonably
don't live like that.
I can be reasonably confident that losing $1,000
You know how you
would
live?
significantly hurt
You
me.
live
I cannot be
like a
reasonably
Christian.
confident that hell exists.
You live like a Christian. Thou shalt not steal. If somebody walked right by here, took your wallet, I bet you wouldn't look at that person and go, well, I'm agnostic.
Stealing,
What does it
slavery,
matter?
rape, and murder is
Or
wrong.
maybe,
I don't need to rely on a religious text.
Maybe your cell phone. That's even more valuable nowadays. If somebody walked by, took your cell phone, I bet you wouldn't be an agnostic. You would be an absolute moralist. You would believe in absolute morality. You'd be a transcendentalist. You would believe that it's absolutely true that person stole from you, and that's what you would say in court too.
Actually, I'd be more worried about my self-interest.
You would say that in total violation of your own worldview. At least that's your espoused worldview. I know that you're not agnostic. I know you're not atheist. I know that you're not this skeptic that you claim you are. I know that you can know things for certain, but that's because you're created in God's image.
I do not know for certain that stealing is absolutely 100% wrong, but I know
course
with
you
reasonable
do.
certainty
Of course you
that
do.
we have to ban stealing as a
Wait
society.
till you're a dad. Wait till you're a father. Somebody does something to your child, you're going to know for certain that somebody
Now you're
committed
talking over
moral
me, so I'm going to keep
evil.
on talking until we actually have a conversation. You can't just talk over me to make an argument.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the argument ended in the first minute of the conversation when you surrendered knowledge.
I'm saying it's over, but that doesn't mean it is.
Yeah, this is Fast and Furious signifying nothing. This is all this is. All you are doing, you know what this is like, right? For you, it's like taking a bottle of pop, soda, shaking it up, letting it explode, and then looking at it and say, taking two bottles, right? Let's say Coke, Pepsi. You shake them up, you open them up, and then you ask the question, which one's true? What? It doesn't apply. Same thing for you. Once you surrender knowledge, everything you're saying right now doesn't apply because you don't know. It's meaningless.
You keep asserting that you have to be absolutely certain and there have to be absolute
If we didn't come
truths.
from God, sir, where did we come from?
I mean, there's a mountain of evidence that we came through a natural process of natural selection. Like that is like...
I'll let the conversation keep going, but evidence presupposes knowledge. Knowledge presupposes certainty.
If we find
This man,
thousands and
again,
thousands of fossils over
is
time,
no longer
that
agnostic.
is
Now
more
he
of-
knows what he knows because now he's even able to observe evidence, apparently. So, okay.
keep on interrupting
So
me to
evolution.
straw man
So
my
you're saying about evolution. So we evolved. So we're just matter in motion?
What do you mean by matter in motion?
Yes, sir. Sir, listen, modern day contemporary evolutionary theory says that we are the byproduct of random, unguided, undesigned chance, and that all we are is matter that moves.
That's not quite what it is.
No, that's exactly what it is.
That's often something that even
I have
people-
some of the leading professors on record saying all we are is stardust floating around.
But that's
Is
not
that what
about
you believe?
random, that's not about random chance or
Okay.
whatever the hell.
Well, yes, it is because they're atheists
No,
too, and they
here's what
believe
it is.
nobody
It's about
guided it.
trial and error. Okay, so say I'm shooting at a target.
Sir,
I
I'm
miss
asking
the
you-
target. I'm not going to shoot in a random direction after I miss the target. I'm going to get closer to the target. Same
Uh-huh.
with evolution. If one species comes around and it doesn't survive,
Yeah.
it's not like you start from scratch with a completely random species. Over time, species are more and more suited for that environment. That's what it means.
Yeah, isn't it nice to know things?
Again, you keep on claiming that I'm saying I know things, but I'm not.
Okay, all right, I try to help you. Okay, isn't it terrible not to know things?
Again, we can be reasonably certain about
Which
these
one
things.
do you want, man?
You
Isn't
want
it nice to know things, or isn't it nice not to know things? Which one do you want? I'm trying to
That's
get.
a
I'm trying to
false
help you.
dichotomy. It's not about it's not about not knowing or knowing. It's about on
So
a
all we are-
wide range between knowing and not knowing. How confident can you be given the amount of evidence you observed around you?
All
That's
we
what
are
it
is matter in motion.
So you're describing something in deliberately pessimistic language so
Wanna
that
know if
everybody
your
has doubts and
worldview-
wants to believe in religion to feel
Sure,
better.
sure.
But that's not actually an argument.
I understand. You said that before. Sir, all we are is matter in motion. Where do we get meaning, morals, and beauty?
We can ascribe whatever meaning to our existence that
It's
we
just
want.
a convention.
What do you mean? You keep on saying just a convention. That's
Yes.
a normative argument.
Yeah. That's
I
the only
say
option.
It's great that we
If
can
it's not
decide that
transit-
human beings have meaning.
if
It
it's
is
not-
great that we can decide that everybody around us has inherent worth and deserves rights. It
I-
is great that we assume that having green space is a good thing
I
and
agree.
act on that.
Yeah, I
It is
agree.
great to do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you keep on saying just, but that's a normative assumption. That's not like that's not an actual argument.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's great for all those things. I ask you again, where do we get meaning, morals, and beauty, and are they absolute or not?
We take the morals and meaning that
Are they absolute or
actually
not?
has no, they're not absolute.
Okay, so there's no absolute morality?
No, it doesn't have to be absolute. Again,
Okay,
observe
so
the world around you and
Murder,
see what
so murder, rape, pedophilia, those are not absolutely wrong, they're just conventionally wrong?
they are so wrong that it's reasonable to punish people and lock them away for doing it to other people, and that's all that matters.
Oh, so it doesn't matter if they're...
Absolute is a
So it doesn't matter if they're actually wrong, it just matters that if
It
we
matters
act...
that they hurt other people and
Right.
we saw them hurt other people.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
So, agnosticism, just for you guys that care about philosophy and the history of philosophy, agnosticism always reduces itself to pragmatism. Pragmatism is the denial of transcendental morals, meaning, and beauty, which means you can't have the basis for beauty. So in other words, for example, I'll give you an example. People are putting crucifixes in a bottle of urine, and they're calling that art. Okay, would you let people do that with a picture of your mother? Okay, this is what Rome, the Roman Empire did, and what that led to, because they rejected God as a standard of morality and goodness, they ended up plastering Rome with public pornography. How would you like your child to live in a world with public pornography? Right? Because just like him, they did not believe in an absolute standard of right and wrong, and so there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong.
The Vatican is the
putting
great
vile
capital of the
things.
religious world. That
I'm
doesn't
not
make
a,
sense.
I'm not a
It's not an
Catholic, so I'm a
argument.
Christian.
Catholics are Christian. So you're denying the religiosity of the largest denomination of
Then
Christianity
not
in the
denying the
world?
religiosity, I'm
You're denying
denying
validity
the
of the original
Orthodox.
Christian faith? There
Sir,
was no
listen for a
Protestant
second.
faith.
Listen for a second. Have you ever heard of the Protestant Reformation?
Yes.
That's a denial of Catholicism, sir. The 95 Theses nailed on the door of Wittenberg by Martin Luther is a rejection of the Catholic
so the
faith.
translation of the Bible isn't 100% correct. I was confused because I thought you said it was copied perfectly,
That's
and now you're saying there was
obviously
such a
non-
schism.
doesn't
and-
follow.
Yeah, it does follow. You said the Bible was copied for 6,000 years from the Dead Sea Scrolls and no alterations. Now you're saying that
6,000 6,000 years. Okay, man, you're onto something, bro.
And now you're saying
You're listening
actually,
carefully, that's for
there
certain.
was a whole reformation and schism where somebody wrote 95 ways that all previous transliterations of the Bible and interpretations were incorrect.
I'm so glad that you're spirited enough to sit there and espouse the convictions that you have, which I would say are unfounded, but at least you're willing to sit there.
What convictions? What do you mean?
Oh, just anything. Your convictions of right and wrong, your convictions of why we do right and wrong.
My
your
convictions,
convictions
I
of...
have stated what I believe over and over again. And
I know
you
that.
talk over me
Yeah,
and
I know that.
strawman me for the crowd.
Well, I think for the record, we know who's talking over who. I'm asking you questions, you usually answer them with a question. I'm asking you a detailed question about your worldview, and you usually give me some
I started
non-sequitur answer.
asking you questions, and then you asked me questions.
Right. You usually give me an answer that's not even relevant to what we're talking about. When I ask you if you believe that morality is transcendent, you say we just do it because.
When I ask you what evidence there is that the Bible is...
I gave you the evidence and you don't like it. I give you the evidence and you don't like it.
You said the evidence was that it was copied over and over again, it was old, and you saw a bunch of archaeological tombs.
Nope, that's not my evidence.
What is your evidence of the Bible?
Not what I said, sir.
Is the evidence of your Bible that I'm not correct about everything? Is that what it is?
I'll say it again one more time. The argument of biblical Christianity is built on a transcendental argument, and this is how it goes. Why is Christianity true? Because of the impossibility of the contrary. The attempt to deny Christianity asserts Christianity because you borrow from Christianity. You are living on borrowed capital. Every time you speak against Christianity, every time you speak against Christianity, you borrow principles that are rooted in Christianity, like logic, like reason, like morality, like right and wrong.
Rooted in Christianity.
Yes, they are.
The history of philosophy predates Christianity.
No, it does not, sir. Oh, thank you.
Aristotle was not a Christian. Socrates was not a Christian. Plato was not a Christian. Like, what are you talking about? You keep on referencing the history of philosophy and reason, which predates Christianity in your arguments. And then you say that Christianity is the source of logic and philosophy?
This is obviously naive and facile, what's going on
here. So you're
here.
claiming that Aristotle was a Christian. That's your claim.
When you talk about the history of philosophy, it didn't start with Aristotle, sir. It started with Thales, and it started with the Milesians. It did not start with Socrates or Aristotle or Plato.
Are those people older than Aristotle, right? They're older? They also predate Christianity.
No, they don't.
They don't predate Christianity?
You ever heard of Adam and Eve?
Oh, so it doesn't predate the made-up Genesis creation story of Christianity. Excuse me.
Yeah, hello, I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible. Listen, sir, I don't just believe the New Testament where it says Jesus died on the cross and rose again. I believe in Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
I'm saying the practice.
I believe that too. You know what I mean?
The practice of Christianity happened way after the origins of philosophy.
The God of Christianity is the same God that revealed Himself to Adam and Eve.
But the people
Nothing predates the first man and woman on planet Earth. Nothing.
You are saying that Christianity, not God, Christianity is the source of logic and reason.
Yeah, Christianity rightly defined, which is the only true religion that ever has been, ever is, and ever will be.
Even if we accept your creation story, Adam and Eve predate the time when people practiced Christianity because that didn't happen until Jesus came around.
What I'm saying is that your understanding of Christianity is fundamentally flawed because of your ignorance of biblical theology. And that's okay, because I don't expect you to have biblical theology and understand biblical theology unless you study it. So any biblical theologian understands that the same God that Adam and Eve knew in the Garden of Eden is the same God that is revealed, that sent Jesus Christ to die on the cross and rise again.
So if you want to say that logic and reason comes from God, that's one thing, but you're saying it comes from Christianity, which as an actual religion that people practice did not come around until Jesus.
Yeah, Christianity in name, I understand what you mean, but Christianity in its essence predates the name. Do you know that the name Christianity, do you know where it came from?
What would you call the essence of Christianity?
Real quick, do you know where the name Christianity came from?
Christ.
No, sir. Where did it come from? Who said, where did it originate?
Wasn't it the Paul or whoever?
No, sir. Christianity is the name that was given to the sect of Christians by the enemies of Christianity as a name of slander. They were so-called Christian. They were first called Christians in the book of Acts. You see that, okay? For example, in Acts chapter, I think it's Acts chapter 17, but in other words, we didn't invent the word Christianity. We understand that the true and living God has revealed Himself to Adam, to Abraham, to Moses, to Isaiah, to Jesus, to Paul.
Evidence?
Well, evidence that you won't accept because you don't have a biblical worldview. You have an agnostic worldview. I can give you evidence, sir, I can give you evidence that piles up to the moon. And you know why you won't accept a shred of it? Because of your worldview.
You have not cited any evidence that would be believable outside of already accepting your conclusions.
Right, I gave you the evidence. I'll give it to you
If I have to
again.
accept your conclusion in order to believe that your
But I'll
evidence
give
is
you
valid,
evidence. You know, I'll
that's
give
not
you.
a valid conclusion.
Yeah, I'll give you evidence that I am encouraged by as a Christian. But that's because I'm a Christian. For example, there's 25,000 manuscripts of the Bible.
I'm asking you, why should a non-Christian who hasn't already accepted the conclusions of Christianity, what evidence do you have for people like that?
No, sir. People don't accept Christianity on the basis of evidence. They accept Christianity on the basis of knowledge. They know they're sinners. They know they're accountable to God, and they know that unless
I know I'm a sinner. I'm not a sinner. People around me are not
they know that
inherently
unless
sinful.
they repent, they will go to hell and not
That's
to heaven.
not true. You just made that up. That's not true.
Well, it's I understand that you disagree with it, but I'm telling you on the basis of my worldview and what the Bible says, there are no such things as atheists or agnostics. People actually do know things, and people actually believe in God in their heart of hearts.
No, I don't.
They suppress that knowledge through unrighteousness. In other words, because they choose rebellion rather than submission to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, they suppress the truth.
Christ?
What's that?
If people inherently believed in Jesus Christ, you wouldn't have had to send missions all over the colonized
No,
world
sir.
in order to convert them.
They believe, and I said it earlier, they believe that God exists, that He is infinite, eternal, that He made them, that they're accountable to Him. These are the limits of conscience and creation. These are the limits of what you can know through your human, God-given conscience and through the creation around you, that you know, here is something made it, somebody big and great made all of this, and you know in your heart of hearts that whoever made all this, that you live in light of Him.
Heart of hearts. That is something that you just presuppose. I do not
Yep.
know that in my heart of hearts.
I presuppose it on the basis of revelation from God.
I think it is a beautiful, wonderful thing that I am happy to live in and be exuberant and even sanctify it without thinking somebody
Sounds
created
religious.
it. You can do that. You can
You
have
sound
a
religious, man.
You can have a religious and spiritual worldview that does
Of
not
course.
rely on the
You know
empirical
why?
doctrine.
Because you're trying to ascribe meaning to your worldview, and you can't do it without borrowing from the religious language of Christianity.
Christianity is not the only faith that has religious language. You're claiming it does, and it doesn't.
Right, but you got to remember, I'm a Christian, and so my argument is that there's only really one religion that exists in terms of truth metaphysically, and that's the true and living God of the Bible. That's it.
That might be what you believe, but that
Yes,
doesn't mean
sir.
that there aren't numerous religions that also use similar.
Oh, there's
language.
countless. There's thousands of religions.
Secular humanism is one.
But the
such
Bible
religion.
says that the gods of the nations are idols, and but God created the heavens. And so only the creator of the universe is the true and living God, which obviously my argument is that that's the God revealed in the Old and New
You
Testament
still
of the
haven't
Bible.
given any reason that we have to think that somebody created the universe in order to either sanctify it or act upon what we observe in the world.
I gave you the evidence, but you don't accept it
You keep
because
on
you're not
repeating that
Christian.
line, but you haven't actually given any evidence.
What good is evidence to an agnostic who can't know anything for certain?
Again, we can look at the world. I'm asking you based on what I can actually
I know you don't
observe
like
and
that
see in the world.
because it holds your feet to the fire, but that is where you're at, unless you want to reject your worldview and start over again. Somebody that doesn't know things for certain, what good is evidence?
Evidence can make you reasonably confident about things. It doesn't make you absolutely
That's like
certain.
going up to a delusional human being and telling them about reality. What good is it?
What are you calling me delusional because
No,
I want
no,
to
sir,
look at
sir,
the physical
sir.
world
Sir,
around me in
sir.
order to like
Why
reach a conclusion?
students are not capable of this is beyond me. I gave you an analogy, a metaphor. I didn't call you delusional in that sense. I used the metaphor of a delusional human being. And wouldn't you agree if you and I went up to a person that was completely delusional? Let's say they believe they were, they were an alien from another world, and they had it all worked out, and everything we told them, they just interpreted along the planet that they're from and the spaceship they came from. And we said, like, sir, don't you understand? You're in America. This is 2019. What good is giving evidence to that person that's so delusional? It's impossible. It's like telling a blind person, right, what it's like to see. It's not gonna matter to him because he'll never know it in his
I know what
experience.
it's like to feel spirituality and to feel that kind of feeling, and that's what you said. But that doesn't mean that I have to believe that empirically a God exists and that the Bible is exactly what He wants for people. That's a leap that you don't have to make in order to be a spiritual person who finds sacredness in the world around them.
My argument for Christianity, the argument against you is this, is that without the God of the Bible, you can know nothing for certain. And you've proven that today, so thank you.
What do you mean I've proven that today? I have not. You keep on trying to get the
You want to start over again? What time is it? Tell us what you know for certain and how do you know it?
Well, you keep on saying, tell us what you know for certain. I reject the idea that you have to know things for absolute certain.
Are you certain that you reject it for certain?
Am I certain about my own intent? That's the one thing I can say for certain.
How do you know that? Okay, so you are certain about something. So you're no longer agnostic. Keep that in mind, folks. He just abandoned
I know how
agnosticism.
I feel about this. What do you mean?
And now he's saying he knows for certain something.
You know what?
What do you know for certain?
You have convinced me that I'm not actually 100% certain about my own feelings. I am
All right.
just so reasonably confident in them because I exist inside of my own being that I'm comfortable expressing them.
Give him a round of applause. Because at least we made some progress, right?
So yes.
Okay, tell us again. Here we go, one more time.
What was the original question again? So we don't get off
yeah, here we go. It's real hard. What do you know for certain and how do you know it?
I don't need to know things for certain. I don't know anything
That's
for
a
certain.
non sequitur argument. It's irrelevant.
How is it irrelevant?
It doesn't answer the question, sir. It doesn't answer the question.
I do not know things for certain. You are presupposing that I know
Wait a
things for
minute,
certain.
wait a minute. So are you back to agnosticism again? You just rejected it. You just said you knew things for certain. And now you're saying you don't.
There must have been a confusion. Okay.
Oh man, I got you on tape, man. What are you? Okay, say it again. What do you know for certain and how do you know it?
I don't need to know anything for certain.
Do you know that for certain?
No.
There you go. Thank you guys. That's what happens when you reject your creator.
Oh, did you like take a video of the last 2 minutes of the interaction so that you could spread it around the internet and say, lay epic college? Like, come on.
No. We record everything in context and release everything in context. But what I'm saying is this, is that we're right back to where we started from an hour ago or however long we've been talking.
Right.
Which is that on the basis of your worldview, you cannot know anything for certain. You say it doesn't matter that I don't know anything for certain, which is irrelevant. There you go. This is what happens to you when you reject your creator.
Are you leaving now?
What's that?
Are you leaving? Is that why you're trying to wrap up?
I am wrapping up in a little bit, but what I'm saying is that the reason why we're concluding these, why I think the argument was over the first minute that you surrendered knowledge, the minute you did that, the argument was over, technically speaking. Because if we can't know knowledge for certain, then everything we're both about to say is meaningless.
Just because you don't know for sure doesn't mean it's meaningless.
No, sir. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Why?
I know you're not going to like what I'm about to say, but to study the history of philosophy, this is exactly where
the
David...
history of philosophy predates Christianity, and every philosopher agrees with it.
Hold on a second, sir. I'm saying something. You study the history of philosophy, that's exactly where David Hume ended up in a violent skepticism, where he rejected the possibility of knowing anything. And that violent skepticism was where every other philosopher picked up. That's where Immanuel Kant picked it up, Hegel picked it up. That's where all these other philosophers picked it up, because they thought, no, we can't embrace radical skepticism like Hume. We have to be able to account for doing philosophy. We can't keep our universities open if we're all just surrendering to skepticism.
I'm not saying, so when you say surrender to skepticism, is
Yeah,
what you're saying, like,
the idea that we can't know anything for certain.
just because you say you don't know anything for certain doesn't mean that you can't be confident enough about things to act on them. It's
Oh, I
not
know that,
being
but the
a mature
worldview...
grown-up and saying,
Yeah, no. I know that, but you'd have to surrender your worldview and start over.
What worldview? What were you talking about?
The worldview that led you to the conclusion that you can't know anything for certain.
Why would you have
It's
to...
called agnosticism.
I don't have to surrender the idea that I can't know anything for certain.
Oh, I know you probably won't because you're a
To
practicing.
be confident about
You live like a
whenever
Christian
I know,
every day.
whenever I think I know, in order to act on it. Like, it's not that
Yeah,
hard
I know
to
you're not going to in the real world, because in the real world you live like a Christian. We've already established that.
I do not, like you
Thou
say-
shalt not steal from you. Thou shalt not murder you.
I mean,
Thou shalt not disrespect
according
your
to your
parents.
definition of living like a Christian, I also
You
have
know
to
that. Thou
relate-
shalt not lie to you. Listen, if you don't live like a Christian,
Now
you're in
you're-
trouble. You won't graduate from this college.
Now you are
If you
doing
don't
the
live like a
liberal.
Christian,
You're doing the liberal
Yeah, right.
reductionist Christianity.
Right.
That's what
If you
you're
don't live
doing
like a
right
Christian, you will not graduate from this college.
now. What do you? So if I don't
If
walk
you don't
around
abide
telling
by,
everybody that
if
there's
you don't
something going
abide
to
by
hell,
these principles, thou shalt not lie. You will not
those are cherry
graduate.
pick principles. If I agree with some things that Christians happen to espouse, that doesn't make me a Christian. I don't agree with walking around.
I didn't say it made you a Christian, sir. I didn't say it made you a Christian. It says that you're borrowing Christian capital in order to practically live in the real world. And of course, once again, that's what the Bible says happens to everybody. They end up living contrary to their profession. They don't live like consistent nihilists, skeptics, agnostics, existentialists,
I'm not a skeptic or a
mystics.
nihilist. I keep on saying I am. I'm not.
I didn't say you were, sir. I'm rattling off many worldviews at this point. You are essentially an existentialist agnostic. That's what you are. I know you may not want to say that you are, but categorically, unless you prove me otherwise, that's what you are. You believe that you believe that morality is subjective, it's not ultimate. You believe that truth is not knowable, certainly not knowable. That's agnosticism. You are an agnostic subjectivist.
I would describe what I
Period.
believe as contextualism. Now let me describe it again. Let me try to phrase it in a different way to make sure that I can make the distinction for you. Okay? So,
Real quick before you do that, does anybody else have any questions about Christianity, the Bible? I know this gentleman has been kind enough to sit here and talk with us, and for the most part been very respectful. But if there's somebody else with a different question, the microphone works for a little while longer. Of course, we're usually...
Hey, man. So what's your name?
My name's Emilio.
Emilio?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. I'm
Nice to meet you. What is it?
Read?
Read.
Just like reading a book, which you do, I'm sure, every day.
Yeah.
All right. So, I'm sure you know that there's hundreds of different kinds of religions.
Oh yeah, thousands.
Yeah. What makes you so sure that yours is the right one?
That's a great question. I think those are the kinds of questions you should be focused on.
Yeah.
And so to me, kind of like I started my whole talk today, is talking about like the way that I conclude Christianity or argue for Christianity. So my argument is called a transcendental argument for the existence of God and the validity of Christianity. I know it two ways, internally, externally. Internally, I see that the Christian faith is consistent. Externally, I see that there are many factors confirming the internal evidence. Now, that's convincing to me as a Christian, because I believe in God, and because I believe in God, I believe in the laws of logic, I believe in absolute truth, I believe in meaning, morals, beauty, things like that. I believe that we're created in God's image. So those things resonate with me.
Right.
But as an agnostic that questions everything, or an existentialist that believes that the truth lies within somewhere, right? You are left to subjectivism, where everyone just stipulates their own worldview and we can never get to the bottom of it. I call it a completely hopeless worldview, because in philosophy it's called the problem of truth in many minds. Because you can stipulate one reality, but the person next to you doesn't have your brain.
Right.
So what's going on in your brain and what's going on in their brain is two different things. So how can we arbitrate? What is the Deisman between the Deisman's like an old arbitration word? How is going to arbitrate between the two minds? You see what I'm saying? If we don't have some transcendent standard above us all, how will we know? And so that's what I'm saying is that it's either God or absurdity. And if you reject God, you will expose your absurdity.
So,
like that young lady here earlier with the atheist, she didn't have a basis for morality.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
But can you even prove that God exists?
Yes, without him you don't know anything at all.
How can you prove that though?
Well, what do you know for certain without God?
I know that I drink water.
How do you know that?
What do you mean?
Yeah, how do you know that?
That I can drink water?
Yep.
Because it's just a proven fact.
Okay, but that's called begging the question. You haven't actually proven the proposition.
So
how do you know that you can drink water?
Because if I do it, it happens. If I pick up that water bottle right now and actually pour the water down my throat, I am drinking that water.
So it's how the person next to you determines truth as well. It's a matter of fact. It's axiomatic. So truth is based on axioms. But you're back to the same problem. What's axiomatic for this person is not axiomatic for you.
I think it's a collective thing that everyone knows.
And on top of that, let me ask you this. What you just said right now presupposes two things. Are you ready? It presupposes the validity of your reason, and it presupposes the validity of your senses. How do you know your reason and your senses are valid? How do you know you're not a brain in a vat, or you're really in a padded room somewhere upside down with a needle in your back? How do you know that?
I mean, that's a decent argument.
I mean, so, like, back in the day, it would have been like brain in a vat. Maybe in our day today, it's like the Matrix dilemma. How do you know you don't have a wire attached to your head, like what's that dude's name in the show? What is it?
Keanu Reeves.
Neo, okay.
Yeah.
How do you know you're not Neo, man? You got a cable in your head.
I mean, the same thing can be said for, like, religion. How do you know that when you die, you're going to go to heaven?
You can't possibly postulate anything about anything else yet, because you haven't determined yet that you're not a brain in the vat. So this has led philosophers to what's known as solipsism. Do you know what that is?
No.
Solipsism is the idea that you can only know what's going on in your mind. That's it. But even that is insufficient. Because what that assumes is that self-consciousness is self-evident. It's not.
So according to that logic, God could just be a figment of your imagination.
Could be. So you need a proper transcendental foundation from which you can reason. So it's either you have an infinite reference point, back of which you can't go any further, or you have an infinite regression, back of which is an endless sequence of not knowing. That's what the Bible says. When you reject your Creator, listen carefully, the Bible says He gives you over to futility. And so I've studied the history of philosophy for many years. Over the history of philosophy, going all the way to the pre-Socratic philosophers, you understand that philosophers come to the same basic conclusion at the end of the day. We don't know.
And that's why, okay. And that's the basis of pretty much why religion was created in the first place, to answer the questions that people don't know, that they can't comprehend.
That assumes a certain understanding of history that I disagree with. I don't agree with our. You have a more of a secular history of humanities, where I would have what the Bible would call a history of redemption, which is biblical history. You see?
Okay, but can you agree that there are things that happened before people even, Jesus Christ was even born, before Christianity was even a thing?
That's a good question.
Is that all just not real? Because it's been proven that it is real.
That's a good question.
It's been proven that governments were made, that these civilizations were here before Christianity was here.
Okay, so the word before Christianity is sort of an oxymoron. There's no such thing. What I'm saying is that you can't go any further back than Adam. Adam believed in the same God Jesus believed in, the God of the Bible. And so what I'm saying is that Adam was the very first man. Now, I accept the testimony of Scripture when it comes to historical facts like Adam. You do not. That just exposes the nature of our worldview. Then I'm going to ask you how you know anything about history for certain. And as a brain in a vat, you may not.
Okay, but as a brain in a vat,
So don't
you
you
also can't know.
No, that's a knowledge claim. That's already a knowledge claim about what I possibly could know. So that's a truth claim you can't make. The difference between us is that I never, in my worldview, I never surrender knowledge. I never say it's possible not to know. There are certain things I can know for certain, and there are certain things that it's impossible not to know, like that God has revealed himself in the Bible through Jesus Christ. Because why? Because without him you can't know anything at all. Not rightly.
But basically what you're saying is that there's no possible way I can know for sure that, say, these civilizations occurred before Adam.
You don't have a foundation for knowledge.
But, I mean, there's plenty of books, actual ruins of these civilizations that...
All of that assumes the validity of your reason, your senses, and your experience.
But the same can be said for you and...
You wouldn't know it.
Take your hands off of our...
How do you know that God exists?
Don't touch it. What?
That could be true, but you wouldn't know it to be true because of your worldview.
This is our speaker. You have no right to touch it.
Agnosticism.
No.
Basically.
You have no right to touch it.
Okay, so you want to try something else? Don't touch our equipment or you could go to jail. That's how it works. I'm just saying, man. Don't touch our equipment. Thank you. Be respectful enough not to do that. Oh, by the way, for the officers here, let's keep the sidewalks clear, okay, because they really ask us to do that, so you can do that. You're asking great questions. I'm just trying to reinforce the idea that without God, you can't account for why you're able to know things. See, listen very careful to what I'm about to tell you. The Christian position is not that what I'm saying is that you don't know things. I actually believe you do know things, but you know those things not because of your worldview, but because of mine. Because the Bible says you're created in the image of God and you have a God-given conscience. And by virtue of being in God's image, you're rational, logical, you have meaning, morals, and purpose. And because of the Christian worldview, you do know certain things. You're able to predicate, meaning you're able to comment on things and make meaningful statements about reality, not because of your position, but because of mine. So that's my whole burden coming out here, is to show that on the basis of biblical Christianity, on that basis, we are able to make meaningful comments and statements and things like that, you see?
I mean, not necessarily. Just because Christianity is a thing doesn't mean we can't have a meaningful conversation.
My argument is that that is the truth.
I know. That's what.
And we'll go right back to step one again if you'd like.
That's your belief, and that's my.
Like, for example, I ask you the question: could you be wrong about everything that you claim?
Absolutely.
Then you know. Then it follows. Hold on. No, because that's already a knowledge claim. So hold on.
No, I can be wrong about everything just like you can.
No, but that's not a I could be wrong. That's a certainty claim. Hold on a second. What I'm saying is that. Oh, 1 second. Whoa. Hold on. Let this guy. I'll give you time. Hey, I'll give you time.
Can you move it real fast? Because you're really loud by the doors.
Oh, no, I can't. I appreciate it. We just have to disagree. Thank you. But, Reed, here's the thing. The reality is that when you make a statement and you say that, well, yeah, man, I can't know anything, but you can't either. You already went from non-certainty to certainty without validating certainty.
No, because if we're going to say that we're on the same ground, we're both human beings.
We're not on the same ground. I have Christian theistic presuppositions. You have non-Christian presuppositions.
I'm trying to break this down to like the basics. According to you, we're both created by God.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're both human beings.
Yeah.
We both have the same whatever.
Yeah, and on the basis of that, we can have a conversation.
Yes.
But not on the basis of your worldview.
Okay.
On the basis of your worldview, you and I should look at each other and say, I don't know.
No. That's not at all what I've been saying.
Okay, try it again. How do you know anything for certain?
God, we really are just going to keep going in circles.
Well, because transcendental arguments are circular in nature. In other words, you are bound, if you do not appeal to God, you are bound to say this: I reason because I reason, I sense because I sense. That is a viciously circular argument. It's called begging the question.
But every time I've tried to say, you're the same as me because we're both human, we both function the same way, you said no, because I'm Christian, my way is right and you're wrong.
Oh yeah, because what I'm saying is that my total worldview answers these questions. Yours is hopelessly incapable of answering those questions.
No, it's not. It is proven that these civilizations that existed before Christianity are actually there.
Yeah, but you're the one that just told
Christianity.
Yeah, but you're the one that just told me you could be wrong about everything you're claiming.
And so could you, because
if I was wrong, you wouldn't know it.
And if I was wrong, you wouldn't.
Well, that's a knowledge claim.
See, you keep saying
so you're not being consistent with your worldview.
No,
so you should be. If to be consistent, what you should be is like, yeah, you could be right about everything.
And just, I could be right about everything, you could be right about everything. Are we both likely right about everything? Hell no. There's no way that we can both know everything there is to know.
The problem is that your argument is not consistent. You have to step into a hypothetical idea.
You also have to step
No, I don't. I've never surrendered knowledge in the first place.
Were you there when Jesus rose from the grave?
Don't have to be.
Yeah, you do. To actually know
I have the testimony of Scripture that's reliable.
Can I get a book?
Okay, that has been, but the Bible, in its many forms, has been proven to have gaps in it. To be proven that things have not actually happened.
Where? Can you point to any of them? I've been studying the Bible for many years. Maybe longer than you've been alive, okay? Because I'm older.
How old are you?
42. So, I have never heard an argument against the Bible that stands the test of time, that stands the test of criticism. I can't think of one. I've been asking for 12 years. I've been coming here. I've never heard one argument that proves the Bible is to be unreliable. Not one. You like to take a stab at it?
No, because anything that I say, you're just going to say isn't factual, can't be proven, and...
Well, two things. I'm going to tell you don't even have a worldview to ask the question. Number two, because you can't know anything for certain. Therefore, it's like this. If you can't know anything for certain, Reed, then really the question we should be asking is the statement you're about to make meaningful or meaningless? And how do you know it?
I could ask the same of you.
Yeah, but that's not answering the question to ask me. You already know my answers because I'm a Christian, and that to you is not appealing.
I know your answers because you're answering everyone the same way. You're just running around with the same.
Of course, I don't have any other answers. The answer is God. The answer is that because of God, I'm made in God's image. I can reason.
You can't actually prove any of this.
What's that?
You can't prove any of your statements.
The proof
you're
is
just stating that these are the facts, but you can't prove anything.
The proof is in the impossibility of the contrary.
You're just asking all of us.
You can want no better proof. You can want no better proof than the impossibility of the contrary. If by denying God your worldview is reduced to absurdity, then you know that God is necessary for your worldview to stand up. And that's what I've been showing and exposing here my whole time on campus.
I have more questions, but we're just going to keep running in circles.
Come back and ask me a better question then.
I mean, you're just giving everyone the same runaround. I've asked you straight up, and all you said is that I'm not right. That's your only argument, is that I can't be right.
No, that was not my only argument. My only argument was that...
been proven to be
no,
true.
My only argument is that your argument is viciously circular. It doesn't account for all things. It's subjective in nature, and it's self-refuting. My argument is different than yours, because in my circularity, and there is circularity, because of God, I can know things, and I can know things because of God. Absolutely circular. But my argument becomes the foundation for all of my reason. And without it, you can't reason. You can't come to the place to know anything for certain. The only thing you're left with is saying, I reason because I reason. I know my reason is valid because I reason that it's valid. That is a vicious circle.
Okay.
So is everybody else, ma'am. That's why I'm here.
We're just going to keep running in circles. It doesn't matter what I say.
And I know that that's what it seems like.
Well, it's not what it
but
seems like.
These are
You're
opposing.
giving me the same answers every time.
There's no other answer to it.
But you're also not answering me. You're just
No,
blatantly saying that I'm wrong.
I could give you answers, but
which is what I would like. But you're just blatantly saying I'm wrong.
Yeah, but it would be dishonest for me to go on and on about, let's say, archaeology or manuscript evidence, or, they found this old rock in the desert and that somehow proves the Bible. You will interpret the evidence and the arguments based on your worldview.
I mean,
so if you have a naturalistic worldview, you will not accept supernatural claims. Don't you see? Reed, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you have a naturalistic worldview, you will not accept supernatural claims. So what's the point of giving them to you? I'm here to show you that according to your worldview, you cannot know meaning, morals, and beauty. You don't have the foundation for reason, logic. You don't have the foundation for metaphysics, knowledge, epistemology, or ethics. You don't. All you have is one opinion against another. And God is what rescues us from that futility of mind. The Bible calls it futility of mind. Epistemically and philosophically frustrated. The history of philosophy for 4,000 years proves it to be so. And we sit there in awe and admire all these philosophers. Bertrand Russell, at the end of his illustrious career, you know what he said? We are hopeless in the universe. That's the sum total of his philosophical career. And we buy his books and we stand and marvel at the brilliance of his mind. And he was brilliant. But he came to this position, we're hopeless, we're aimless, there's no purpose. And all these guys are in that place. Everybody. Everybody. I mean, I think it was John Paul Sartre who echoed the sentiment that a man is not happy until he's dead. Because life is futile. This is the futility the Bible rescues us from. And I hope you find it through Jesus Christ. I did. Outside of that, I had no purpose for living. I could convince myself and say that my purpose wasn't having fun, having money,
right. Yeah, you said that earlier.
all of that. But you know, those things don't satisfy and they don't last.
That is true.
Yep. And yet Jesus Christ knows that. And so he comes to us at the well, like in John chapter 4, the woman at the well, and he offers us living water to satisfy us where nothing else in the universe can. No amount of pornography, no amount of money, no amount of prestige, beauty, fame, no amount of power will satisfy you, ever. Because you were made by God, for God, in the context of eternal life. That alone can truly satisfy
So the
someone
only
made
thing
in
that
his
can
image.
satisfy my soul is if
God.
I accept God, die, and go to heaven.
No, eternal life begins now. You already in part begin partaking of eternal life because you come into contact with the person of Jesus Christ and you have a spiritual bond with God now. Now. Begins now. And so at 19 years old, I woke up, when I was a young man, my mom, because I was very rebellious as a young kid, okay, very, and my mom, she wanted to say something hurtful to me because I was hurting her so much, and she told me, when you were a babe, I tried to abort you because I didn't want you, and she told me, I wish I never had you, and I tell you, when I was 13 years old and I heard that, I came to the conclusion that I had no purpose in life. My own mother doesn't want me. Well, what was I even born for? You can imagine how that can mess with a 13-year-old, you know what I mean? And so I sought to find my meaning in something else, you know what I mean? But as I went throughout the world, nothing filled that void, nothing filled that hole, that emptiness, that sense of purposelessness, you know what I mean? But when I became a Christian, I was like, oh my goodness, finally, I know why I'm here. Like, I can't believe it. I thought that Jesus and all that stuff, I thought that was just a joke.
But people have that same realization with everything, with tons of other things.
Yeah, other religions too. Yeah, and other religions. Yeah. So what I show, watch, I'll give you an example. What I like to show people is the Quran. So what I like to, in terms of other religions, what I like to show people is that if you take the Bible away from the Quran, it falls to the ground as a meaningless book. Why? Because there's a historical dependence on the Bible. Have you read the Quran?
No.
In the Quran, it mentions Adam, Moses, David, Noah, Jesus, but But guess what? It never tells you who they are. It just assumes that you know. Why? Because they assume you have a biblical background. You see that? They assume you know the story of Noah, you know the story of Abraham, you know all these Bible stories already. So the authors of the Quran, they concluded, well, the Bible is true, because without it, we can't really claim anything. So that shows you the historical dependence on the biblical worldview, and I would argue that for any religion under the sun. Without biblical Christianity, you don't have the historic, theological foundation to make any sort of religious claims. You have to depend on what the Bible says about King David and Pharaoh and Moses, even though the Quran gets it wrong. See, here's the difference between one worldview and another. The Quran actually makes errors.
I mean, they all make errors.
No, they don't. I asked you, where does the Bible make an error? It doesn't. But the Quran makes obvious errors that anyone can go and verify. Let me give you one example. In chapter 7 of the Quran, it says that Pharaoh threatened Moses with crucifixion in the royal court of Egypt. What's wrong with that? Do you know? Crucifixion was not invented until 1,000 years later under the Medo-Persians and then popularized under the Romans. So how in the world can Pharaoh be talking about crucifixion? It doesn't exist as a form of capital punishment yet. For 1,000 years it won't exist. You know who says that? Encyclopedia Britannica, the Encyclopedia of Religion. All these encyclopedias will verify. It's not even a mystery. We know where crucifixion came from. Crucifixion came from the Medo-Persians. It's that simple, okay? But the Quran insists that in the royal court of Egypt they're crucifying people. I mean, we would have ample archaeological evidence of that, but there is none. That's just one example. What I'm saying is that you can't find an equivalent in the Bible to that. If you do, bring it back to me.
Jesus walking on water.
410.
Can you prove that to me?
On the basis of the authority of Scripture, yes. But I can't prove it to you empirically. But remember what I said, Reed? No? Well, that's fine. But Reed, you will interpret... Reed, if I walked on water in front of you, you would find a naturalistic explanation to rationalize it away. You would not drop to your knees and believe in God. That's what Jesus said. Jesus said, even if I put a miracle right in your eyes, raise somebody from the dead, you still, in your sinful, rational mind, would come to some other conclusion. Hey, Reed, I really appreciate the conversation.